My mother called while I was still strapped to a gurney. My ribs shattered and blood still fresh on my skin, but she didn't ask if I was alive. She only barked that I needed to transfer $3,900 immediately because her first-class card being declined would be embarrassing. I didn't cry. I just opened my banking app and pressed the one button I never dared to touch in 9 years. Grounded by my grandfather's secret move. I was about to crush her fake world. My name is Carol Rutherford, and the first thing I realized when I woke up was that the ceiling of the Seabrook Regional Medical Center was a very specific, aggressive shade of white. It was the kind of white that hurt your eyes even when you closed them. I am 32 years old, and until 40 minutes ago, I had been driving a sedan on Route 9 on my way to pick up my daughter, Maisie, from preschool. Now, I was a collection of broken parts strapped to a gurney. My chest felt like it had been crushed by a hydraulic press. Every breath was a negotiation with my fractured ribs. There was a dull, thumping rhythm in my head that I assumed was my own heartbeat, amplified by shock and adrenaline. A nurse was adjusting an IV bag to my left, her movements efficient and practiced. I tried to turn my head, but a sharp spike of pain shot down my neck, grounding me. I was alive. That was the baseline fact. I was alive, but I was broken. Then, the phone rang. It was vibrating on the metal tray table beside the bed, buzzing against the steel like an angry hornet. I knew that ringtone. It was the specific, shrill alert I had assigned to only one person. It cut through the fog of painkillers and trauma with surgical precision. I reached out. My hand was shaking, and I saw dried blood crusted around my fingernails. It looked dark, almost black under the fluorescent lights. I swiped the screen. "Hello?" My voice was a croak, a sound like gravel grinding together. "Carol," the voice on the other end snapped. There was no hesitation, no pause to gauge my state, no intake of breath that might suggest worry. It was Darlene Hart, my mother. "You need to transfer $3,900 immediately. Right now, I am standing at the check-in counter, and the card was declined." I blinked, trying to process the words. The room spun slightly. "Mom?" I whispered. I'm at the hospital." "Oh, stop it," she hissed. The background noise of a busy airport filtered through the line. Announcements, rolling suitcases, the murmur of travelers. "Do not start with the dramatics. Carol, I do not have time for your stories. I'm trying to upgrade to first class because my back is killing me. And the agent is looking at me like I'm a pauper. It is humiliating. Transfer the money. The app says insufficient funds." "I was in a car accident," I said. I tried to enunciate, to make the words heavy enough to land. "A truck ran the red light. My car is totaled. I think my ribs are broken." There was a silence on the other end. For a second, a singular, naive second, I thought she had heard me. I thought the reality of her only child lying in a trauma ward would penetrate the bubble of her narcissism. "Well," she said, her tone shifting not to concern, but to annoyance. "You are answering the phone, so you are obviously conscious. Can you use your fingers?" I stared at the ceiling. The aggressive white suddenly felt cold. "What?" "Can you use your fingers to open your banking app?" she clarified, speaking slowly as if I were the one being difficult. "Because if you are awake enough to make excuses, you are awake enough to fix this. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is to have a platinum card declined in front of a line of people? I told the agent it was a bank error. Do not make a liar out of me, Carol." I closed my eyes. Tears pricked at the corners, hot and stinging, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of a sudden, violent clarity. I thought of Gavin, my husband. The last thing I remembered before the ambulance doors closed was his face. He had arrived at the scene just as they were loading me in. He was pale, shaking, his eyes wide with a terror so raw it made my heart ache. He had held my hand until the paramedics made him let go. He had asked about the blood. He had asked about my neck. He had asked if I could feel my legs. He had been terrified that he was losing me. And here was Darlene. She didn't ask if I was alive. She didn't ask if I could walk. She didn't ask about Maisie. She was worried about the line at the airport check-in counter. She was worried about the $3,900 required for a seat upgrade she didn't need. On a vacation I was paying for. "Carol," she barked. "Are you doing it? The agent is waiting." I looked at my hand again. The blood on my skin was real. The pain in my chest was real. And the voice in my ear was real. "I'm doing it," I said. My voice was steady now. Cold. "Good," she huffed. "Hurry up, and transfer an extra $500 for the lounge access. I need a drink after this stress you have caused me." I lowered the phone from my ear but didn't hang up. I tapped the speaker button and set it on the sheet beside my hip. I could hear her breathing, impatient and heavy. I opened the banking app. Face ID recognized me. Despite the bruising that was surely blooming on my cheekbone, the numbers on the screen loaded. I saw the balance. It was healthy. I worked hard. I was a senior risk analyst at Brighthaven Risk Solutions. My job was to look at patterns, to identify fraud, to see where the numbers didn't add up, and to stop the bleeding before it killed the company. I spent 40 to 50 hours a week analyzing risk for strangers. I looked at the transaction history. Yesterday, $350, high-end spa treatment. 2 days ago, $180, dinner at Le Monde. 3 days ago, $2,000. Consulting fee transferred to her personal account. I looked at these numbers, and for the first time, I didn't see helping mom. I didn't see being a good daughter. I saw a hemorrhage. I saw a parasite feeding on a host. "Carol?" Her voice was tinny coming from the speaker. "The app is loading, right?" "It's loading," I said. I navigated to the settings menu. My finger hovered over a tab labeled Overdraft Protection Linked Accounts. I remembered the day we set this up. I was 23 years old. I had just gotten my first real promotion. Darlene had taken me out to lunch, my treat, of course, and explained, with a voice like warm honey, that we should link our accounts. "For safety, honey," she had said. "In case of emergencies, if you ever get stuck somewhere, or if I do, we can back each other up. It is what families do." I had believed her. I had wanted so desperately to be the daughter she was proud of. I wanted to be the responsible one, the one who could fix things. So I signed the paper, I clicked the box, I created a bridge between my hard work and her bottomless need. For 9 years, traffic on that bridge had only gone one way. I tapped the menu. The screen showed the link. Linked account. Darlene Hart. Primary checking. Status. Authorized for overdraft auto transfer. Indicator. Green. A green dot. A small pixelated circle of permission. That green dot meant she could spend whatever she wanted. And if her account hit 0, mine would automatically fill the void. It meant she never had to hear the word no. It meant she never had to feel the consequences of her own math. I looked at my bloodied hand. I looked at the hospital bracelet on my wrist. Carol Rutherford, trauma ward. I was not a daughter to her. I was an asset. I was a resource. I was an ATM that breathed and drove a car and occasionally crashed. "Carol, seriously, this is taking forever," she complained. I didn't answer. I tapped the green dot. A prompt appeared. "Revoke authorization? This will immediately disconnect the linked account. Any pending transactions relying on this funding source will be declined." There were 2 buttons, cancel and confirm. My heart was hammering against my broken ribs. It hurt, physically hurt, to breathe. But my mind was crystalline. I thought about the house I wanted to buy for Maisie. The one with the bigger yard that Gavin and I kept saying we couldn't afford yet. We couldn't afford it because we were paying for Darlene's upgrades. We were paying for her image. I wasn't just paying with money. I was paying with my life. I was lying in a hospital bed, lucky to be breathing, and she was demanding a transaction. I pressed confirm. The screen loaded for a split second. A spinning wheel. And then, the green dot turned gray. Status: inactive. The bridge was burned. The connection was severed. I felt a strange sensation wash over me. It wasn't panic. It wasn't guilt. It was a lightness, as if one of the heavy weights crushing my chest had just been lifted away. I closed the app. "Carol?" Darlene asked. "I saw the notification on my phone change. What did you do? Did you send it?" I picked up the phone. "No," I said. "What do you mean, no?" Her voice pitched up, sharp enough to cut glass. "The agent is running the card again right now." I revoked the authorization. "Mom," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Calm, detached, foreign. I unlinked the accounts. You what?" She sounded like I had spoken in a dead language. "You can't do that. You cannot leave me stranded here." "You have your own money," I said. "Or you don't. That's a risk assessment you should have made before you got in line for first class." "Carol Rutherford," she screamed. "You put that back right now. Do you hear me? You ungrateful, selfish little brat. I raised you. I sacrificed my life for you. You put that back or I swear to God—" "I have to go, Mom," I said. "The doctor is coming in." There was no doctor. The room was empty except for me and the machines. "Don't you dare hang up on me. Carol, if that card declines again, I am going to—" I pressed the red button. The call ended. The silence that rushed back into the room was heavy. But it was peaceful. I let the phone drop onto the sheet. My hand was trembling again. But this time, it wasn't from shock. It was from the sheer magnitude of what I had just done. 9 years of conditioning, 9 years of being the good girl, gone in a single tap. I stared at the ceiling. The pain in my ribs throbbed. A dull, rhythmic reminder of my mortality. I thought about Gavin. He would be parking the car soon. He would be coming up here to hold my hand, to ask me how I felt, to look at me with eyes that actually saw me. The phone lit up again. It wasn't a call this time. It was a text message. I looked at the preview on the screen. The letters were all capitals, screaming in silence. The card was declined again. "Everyone is looking at me. You have 5 minutes to fix this and apologize." I didn't touch it. I watched the screen go dark. 5 seconds later, it lit up again. Another message. "If you do not fix this right now, I am not getting on the plane. I am coming to the hospital." The threat hung there in the glowing pixels. She wasn't coming to comfort me. She wasn't coming to hold my hand. She was coming to reestablish control. She was coming to force the ATM to dispense cash. I let out a breath that rattled in my chest. Let her come. For the first time in my life. I wasn't afraid of the sound of her footsteps. I was a risk analyst, and I had finally identified the biggest threat in my life. It wasn't the car accident. It wasn't the broken ribs. It was the woman threatening to storm into a trauma ward to get her first-class upgrade. I laid my head back against the pillow and waited. The war had started, and she didn't even know that I had already fired the first shot. She thought she was coming to scold a child. She didn't know she was walking into a room with a woman who had nothing left to lose. And she definitely didn't know that she wasn't the only one making moves. Somewhere, on the other side of town, my grandfather, Edmund, was likely staring at his own phone, watching the dominoes I had just tipped over begin to fall. I closed my eyes and listened to the beep of the monitor. 1 beat, 2 beats, 3. I was ready. I lay there, staring at the sterile white tiles of the ceiling, and my mind did what it was trained to do. It did not panic. It did not spiral into grief. It organized at Brighthaven Risk Solutions, where I had spent the last 7 years of my professional life. We had a saying, "The numbers never lie, but they can be made to whisper things that aren't true." My job as a senior analyst was to ignore the whispers and look at the hard data. I spent my days hunting for anomalies in corporate ledgers, spotting the tiny, red flag behaviors that signaled an employee was skimming off the top or a vendor was inflating invoices. I was good at it. I was excellent at it. I could spot a pattern of embezzlement in a spreadsheet of 10,000 rows within an hour. Yet, as I lay in that hospital bed with my chest taped up and my body throbbing in rhythm with the machines, I realized I had been the victim of the longest, most obvious con in history. And the fraudster had been sleeping in the guest room of my life for 32 years. I closed my eyes and let the mental spreadsheet populate. It was a defense mechanism, a way to distance myself from the physical agony of my broken ribs. I started categorizing the expenses of Darlene Hart. The rent for her condo in the fashionable district of the city was $4,200 a month. She called it a necessity because she needed to be in a safe neighborhood. She claimed the air quality was better for her non-existent asthma. The membership to the Silver Creek Country Club was $600 a month. She didn't play golf. She didn't play tennis. She went there to drink overpriced mimosas and complain about her daughter to other women who were likely funding their lifestyles the same way. She listed this under networking when she explained it to me, claiming she was making connections that would help my career. I had never received a single referral from Silver Creek. Then there was the premium health supplement budget. $500 a month for vitamins that were essentially sugar pills in gold-foiled bottles. She called this preventative care, and the shopping, the endless, relentless shopping. It was never just a dress. It was an investment piece. It was never just a dinner. It was maintaining social standing for nearly a decade. I had categorized these outflows in my mind under the label of family. I had filed them under duty. I had filed them under love. But lying there, stripped of my ability to move, stripped of the constant noise of her demands, the labels fell away. I looked at the raw data. It wasn't family support. It was a subscription service. I was paying a monthly fee for the privilege of being her daughter. A sharp pain spiked in my side, forcing a hiss of air through my teeth. It triggered a memory, vivid and sharp, cutting through the morphine haze. I was 10 years old. It was a Tuesday. I remembered it was a Tuesday because that was the day the utility bill came. I had come home from school with a spelling test pinned to my backpack. I had gotten a perfect score. I had studied for 3 nights straight, memorizing words I didn't even understand, just so I could see that red 100% circled at the top. I had run into the kitchen, the paper fluttering in my hand, desperate to show her. Darlene was sitting at the table, her head in her hands, a pile of envelopes spread out before her like a losing poker hand. She was crying, not the soft, sad crying of someone in mourning, but the angry, frantic crying of someone who had been inconvenienced. "Look, Mom," I had whispered, sliding the test onto the table. She hadn't even looked at it. She had swiped it aside, the paper fluttering to the floor, landing face down near the trash can. "Not now. Carol," she had snapped, "they are going to cut off the lights. Do you understand? We are going to be in the dark because your father is a useless deadbeat who is late with the check again." I had stood there, 10 years old, watching my victory lie in the dust. I didn't cry. I picked up the paper, then I picked up the utility bill. I looked at the numbers. I looked at the checkbook she had left open. I did the math. "If we pay the electric bill now," I had said, my voice trembling, "and wait to pay the phone bill until Friday when the check comes, we have $18 left over for food." She had stopped crying. She had looked at me. For the first time that day, she really looked at me. The anger vanished, replaced by a warm, glowing beam of approval that felt like sunlight after a long winter. "You are so smart," she had cooed, pulling me into a hug. "You are my little problem solver. What would I do without you?" She hadn't praised me for the spelling test. She hadn't hugged me because I was her child. She had hugged me because I had solved a fiscal crisis. She had hugged me because I was useful. That was the moment the training began. That was the moment the algorithm was coded into my brain. If you want love, you must provide value. If you want affection, you must fix the problem. You are not a person. You are a utility. I had spent 22 years chasing that hug. I had graduated top of my class to make her look good. I had gotten a high-paying job to stabilize her finances. I had married a good man so she could brag about her son-in-law. Every major life decision I made was calculated to maximize my utility to Darlene Hart. And what was the return on investment? I looked at my hand, resting on the hospital sheet. There was a bruise forming around the IV line, a dark purple bloom under the skin. The return on investment was a phone call demanding $3,900 while I bled. "Excuse me?" The voice was soft, hesitant. I blinked, pulling myself out of the past. A woman was standing by the side of my bed. She was wearing scrubs that were a calming shade of blue, and her ID badge read, Tanya, RN. She looked tired, with lines around her eyes that suggested she had seen too much trauma for one lifetime, but her expression was kind. "I didn't mean to startle you," Tanya said, checking the monitor. "Your heart rate spiked a little. Are you in pain? Do you need me to adjust the dosage?" "No," I said. My throat felt like sandpaper. "I was just doing some accounting." Tanya smiled. A genuine, perplexed smile. "Accounting? Honey, you just came out of a wreck. You should be resting, not working." She moved to the side of the bed, adjusting the blanket. "We found your phone on the tray. I see you made a call earlier. Is there anyone else you want us to notify? Husband? Sibling? We can call them for you so you don't have to strain yourself." I looked at Tanya. She was a stranger. She was paid to be here. And yet, there was more humanity in her simple question than in the entirety of the conversation I had just had with my mother. "My husband knows," I said. "He is parking the car. But, actually, there is something you can do for me." Tanya paused, her hand on the railing of the bed. "Name it." I took a breath. It hurt, but the clarity was worth the pain. "I need you to take my phone, and I need you to put a restriction on visitors." Tanya's eyebrows knit together. "A restriction? For everyone?" "No," I said. "For my mother. Her name is Darlene Hart. She might be coming here. If she does, she is not allowed in this room. Not for 5 minutes. Not for 1 second. I don't care what she says. I don't care if she screams. I don't care if she threatens to sue the hospital." Tanya looked at me for a long moment. She was a trauma nurse. She knew how to read people. She looked past the bruises and the blood and saw the absolute, steel-plated resolve in my eyes. She didn't ask why. She didn't try to mediate. She simply nodded. "Okay," Tanya said. "Darlene Hart, no entry. I will put it in the chart, and I will tell security at the front desk." "And the phone," I added, pushing the device toward her across the sheet. "I need you to keep it. I need you to witness something for me." "Witness what?" "She's going to text again," I said. "She is going to text, and it is not going to be about my health. I need you to note the time. I need you to read the message. I need a third party to verify that what is happening is real. I need objective evidence." It was the risk analyst speaking. "In a fraud investigation, you never relied on hearsay. You needed logs. You needed timestamps. You needed a chain of custody. If I was going to dismantle the corporation of Darlene Hart, I needed a paper trail." Tanya hesitated, then picked up the phone, as if on cue. The screen lit up in her hand. The vibration buzzed against her palm. Tanya looked down at the screen. Her expression shifted. The professional mask slipped, replaced by a look of pure confusion, then disgust. "Is that her?" I asked. Tanya looked up at me, her eyes wide. She wants to know about her luggage?" "Read it," I said. "Please, read it out loud." Tanya cleared her throat, looking uncomfortable. "It says, 'The airline is holding my bag at the counter because of the payment issue. They will not check it through until the upgrade fee is cleared. What are you going to do about this? I cannot carry it to the gate myself. Answer me.'" The silence in the room was deafening. The machine beeped. Beep, beep, beep. Tanya lowered the phone slowly. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "She knows you are in the ER? She knows you were in a crash?" "She knows," I said. "She doesn't care. The luggage is the priority. The luggage has a tangible value. I am currently a depreciating asset." Tanya's jaw tightened. She tapped the screen, turning it off, and slid it into the deep pocket of her scrubs. "Okay," she said. Her voice was different now, firmer, protective. "I am logging this. Time received. 2:45 post-meridium. Content of message noted. No inquiry regarding patient status. She pulled a small notepad from her other pocket and scribbled something down. Then she looked at me. "She is not getting in here. Carol, I don't care if she brings the governor. You rest. I'm going to stand at the station. And I am going to watch that door." "Thank you," I said. Tanya left the room, the rubber soles of her shoes silent on the floor. I was alone again. I lay back, closing my eyes. I didn't cry. Crying was for people who had hope that things might change. I had no hope for Darlene. I had something better. I had a strategy. I began to formulate the next steps. Step 1 was the financial firewall I had just erected. By unlinking the accounts, I had cut the supply line. The enemy was currently stranded at the airport check-in counter, deprived of resources. Step 2 was evidence gathering. That was happening now. Every text she sent, every voicemail she left, was another brick in the wall I was building between us. Step 3 would be the confrontation. I knew she wasn't going to stay at the airport. Darlene Hart was not a woman who accepted defeat. When the credit card declined, she didn't think, maybe I should spend less. She thought, someone has made a mistake, and I need to go scream at the manager. I was the manager. I shifted my legs, testing the sensation. They were heavy, unresponsive, but I could feel my toes wiggling. The doctor had said I was lucky. I would walk again. I would heal. The ribs would knit together. The bruises would fade. But the relationship with my mother? That was a terminal diagnosis. There was no rehabilitating it. There was only amputation. I thought about Gavin again. He would be walking through the doors any minute. He was the only person in the world who loved me for free. He didn't care about my salary. He didn't care about my connections. He loved me when I was messy, when I was sick, when I was broke. He was the control group in this experiment, proving that Darlene's version of love was a statistical anomaly. Suddenly, a sound drifted in from the hallway. It was faint at first, buried under the hum of the ventilation system and the distant murmur of nurses. But then it grew louder, sharper. Click, clack, click, clack. It was a distinctive sound. High heels on hospital linoleum, fast, aggressive. The rhythm of a woman who believed the world should part before her like the Red Sea. Most people wore sneakers or flats to a hospital. Most people rushed in with soft, panicked footsteps. But Darlene Hart never went anywhere without her 4-inch stilettos. They were her armor. They made her tall. They made her loud. I turned my head toward the door. The sound was getting closer. It echoed off the walls. A percussion instrument of pure entitlement. Click, clack, click, clack. My heart rate monitor picked up speed. Beep, 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 beep. She wasn't coming to hold my hand. She wasn't coming to brush the hair off my forehead. She was coming to demand the PIN code. She was coming to override the system. She was coming to force the transaction through. I took a deep breath, bracing my broken ribs against the pain. Let her come. She thought she was walking into a room with a victim. She didn't realize she was walking into a room with a risk manager who had just closed the account. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. The handle began to turn. The handle turned, and the door cracked open. My breath hitched, a sharp dagger of pain in my chest. But it wasn't Darlene. It was Tanya. She slipped inside and pressed her back against the wood, her eyes wide and alert. The click-clack of the heels outside had stopped, likely intercepted at the nurses' station down the hall. We had bought ourselves a few minutes, perhaps 5, maybe 10 if the security guard on duty was particularly stubborn. "She is at the desk," Tanya whispered, her voice tight. "She is demanding to speak to the charge nurse. She is saying something about medical power of attorney and urgency." "She doesn't have power of attorney," I said. The words came out breathless, but my mind was sharpening, honing in on the strategy like a laser. The pain in my ribs was no longer just pain. It was fuel. It was a reminder of my vulnerability, and in risk management, when you are physically vulnerable, you must be tactically invincible. "Tanya, I need you to help me set the stage. We are going to turn this room into a trap." Tanya stepped away from the door, her brow furrowed. "A trap? Carol, you need to rest." I can't rest, I said. Not yet. If she comes in here and sees me awake, she will argue. She will scream. She will try to bully me into unlocking that account. I don't want an argument. I want a crime. Tanya stopped. She looked at me. Really looked at me. And I saw the moment she understood. I wasn't asking for medical care. I was asking for an accomplice. What do you need? She asked. Kill the lights, I commanded, my voice low. Make it dark. I need to look worse than I am. Lower the head of the bed slightly. I need to look like I am drifting, like I am barely hanging on to consciousness, and put a sign on the door. Strictly restricted, no stimuli. Make it look official. Make it look scary. Tanya moved with the efficiency of a soldier. She went to the wall and dimmed the overhead fluorescence until the room was bathed in a soft, shadowy twilight. She adjusted the blinds, cutting off the sliver of afternoon sun. Then she came to the bed and lowered the incline. The shift in gravity pulled at my broken ribs, a fresh wave of agony that made me gasp. But I didn't complain. The pain would help sell the act. It made me pale. It made me sweat. Phone, I said, holding out my hand. Tanya retrieved it from her pocket and handed it to me. You have 3 minutes before she bypasses the front desk, she warned. She is loud. I didn't waste a second. I bypassed the texts from my mother. I bypassed the missed calls. I went straight to contacts and scrolled down to the letter E. Edmund Rutherford, my grandfather, my father's father. He was 82 years old, a retired judge who spent his days fishing and reading case law for fun. He was the only person in the family who had ever seen Darlene for what she was, a black hole that consumed everything around her. He had warned me, years ago, but I hadn't listened. I had been too busy trying to be the good daughter. Now, I was ready to listen. I typed the message with trembling thumbs. I didn't have the energy for a long explanation. I needed him to understand the gravity of the situation instantly. Mom is here. She is trying to access my accounts. I unlinked her. I am setting a trap in the hospital room. I need you to know I am safe. But I am going dark. I hit send. The 3 dots appeared immediately. Edmund didn't text like an old man. He texted like a lawyer. Fast. Precise. Do nothing more. His reply came, Hold the scene. I am handling the perimeter. Do not sign anything. I locked the phone screen and took a breath. Hold the scene. It was exactly what I needed to hear. I wasn't alone in this foxhole anymore. She is getting louder, Tanya whispered from the door. She had cracked it open a millimeter to listen. She is threatening to call the hospital administrator. Let her, I said. I have one more call. I dialed the number for the bank's fraud department, not the general customer service line, but the direct line for high-net-worth clients, a perk I had qualified for through my job, not my bank balance. Bright Haven Priority Banking. This is Sarah, the voice answered. Sarah, this is Carol Rutherford, I said. I forced my voice to be steady, authoritative, stripping away the tremble of the pain. I am identifying myself with voice print. Verified. Ms. Rutherford, Sarah said. How can I help you? I am currently in the hospital, I said. I have reason to believe that a family member will attempt to access my accounts or impersonate me to reverse a cancellation of overdraft protection I initiated 30 minutes ago. They may try to use my personal information to reset passwords. I can lock the account completely right now, Sarah offered instantly. Total freeze. No money in or out. No, I said. Do not freeze it. There was a pause on the line. Ms. Rutherford? If you suspect fraud, if we freeze it, they walk away, I explained. They claim it was a misunderstanding. They claim the system is down. I don't want them to walk away. I want them to hit the wall. I want a record of the attempt. I took a shallow breath, my lungs burning. I want you to place a high-alert watch on the account. I want to set a verbal duress password. If anyone calls claiming to be me, or claiming to be acting on my behalf, and they do not provide this specific word, I want you to log the attempt, record the location, and decline the request as unauthorized third party. Do not tell them the account is locked. Tell them the verification failed." "Understood," Sarah said, her tone shifting from customer service to security protocol. "What is the verbal password?" I looked around the dim hospital room. I looked at the shadows stretching across the floor. "Cinnamon," I said. It was the name of the cat I had when I was 7. The cat Darlene had given away because it shed on her white sofa. "The password is Cinnamon. Password set," Sarah confirmed. "I have added a note. All authorization changes require direct verbal verification with password. Ms. Rutherford. Are you safe?" "I am about to find out," I said. "Thank you, Sarah." I hung up. The trap was armed. The cheese was in the maze. Now I just needed the rat. My phone buzzed again. It was Gavin. "I'm at the main entrance with Maisie. Security is being weird. They say there is a disturbance on the trauma floor. Are you okay?" "I'm coming up." Panic flared in my chest. Hot and sharp. Gavin. My sweet, gentle Gavin. He would walk in here, see Darlene screaming, and he would try to be the peacemaker. He would try to reason with her, and Darlene would eat him alive. She would twist his words, make him feel guilty, make him feel like he was keeping a mother from her dying child. And Maisie? I could not let Maisie see this. I could not let her see her grandmother as a monster. "Not yet," I typed back, my fingers flying. "Stay downstairs. Do not come up. Mom is here and she is on a warpath. I need you to take Maisie to the cafeteria or wait in the car. Lock the doors. Do not let her see Darlene. Trust me. I am handling this." Gavin started typing, then stopped. Then typed again. "Carol, you're hurt. I should be there. You help me by protecting Maisie." I wrote, "Please, stay away from the blast zone." He sent a thumbs up emoji. It was weak, hesitant, but it was an agreement. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Carol," Tanya hissed. "She's coming. The guard is escorting her. She must have pulled the 'I'm a single mother' card." I slid the phone under my pillow. Deep enough that it wouldn't be seen, but close enough that it could record audio if I nudged it. "Here," Tanya said. She grabbed a pulse oximeter and clipped it to my finger. She checked the monitor. "Your heart rate is 110. You don't have to fake the distress." "I'm not faking the distress," I muttered. "I'm just directing it." "Close your eyes," Tanya commanded. "Mouth slightly open. Shallow breaths. Don't move your eyes under the lids. Focus on a spot on the back of your skull." I went limp. It wasn't hard. The exhaustion was a heavy blanket waiting to smother me. I let my head loll to the side, facing the door but with my eyes shut. I focused on my breathing. In, out, in, out. Then, the phone under my pillow buzzed one last time. A phantom vibration against the mattress. I couldn't look, but I knew who it was. It had to be Sloane, my sister, the flying monkey. I risked a single peek, cracking one eyelid just a fraction. The screen glowed faintly under the pillowcase. "Sloane, you are seriously overreacting. Mom is crying in the lobby. She is embarrassed." "Carol, just transfer the damn money and stop being a martyr. Nobody believes you're that hurt." I closed my eye. "Nobody believes you're that hurt." The sentence hung in the darkness of my mind. It was the family motto. Unless you are bleeding onto the carpet, you are fine. And if you are bleeding onto the carpet, you are ruining the carpet. They didn't ask about the ribs. They didn't ask about the concussion. They worried about the embarrassment. They worried about the public scene. Outside the door, the noise escalated. It wasn't just footsteps anymore. It was a voice I had been trained to obey since birth. "I don't care what the sign says." Darlene's voice was shrill, piercing the sterile quiet of the hallway. "I am her mother. I birthed her. You cannot keep me out of that room." "Ma'am, the patient needs quiet." A male voice, the security guard, rumbled. "The nurse has requested restricted access." "The nurse?" Darlene scoffed. It was a sound of pure derision. "The nurse is an employee. I am family. Do you know who I am? Do you know who my lawyer is? If my daughter dies in there while you are blocking the door, I will own this hospital by Friday. She was using the death card. She was using my potential mortality as a bargaining chip to get past a minimum wage security guard so she could get her luggage fees paid. "Ma'am, please lower your voice," Tanya said from the hallway. She had stepped out to intercept. "Carol is in a fragile state. Her vitals are unstable." "Unstable?" Darlene's voice dropped. But not with concern. It dropped into a theatrical, conspiratorial whisper that was somehow louder than a scream. "Is she conscious? Can she sign?" My stomach turned. Can she sign? Not, can she speak? Not, does she know me? Can she sign? "She is in and out," Tanya lied smoothly. "She is heavily sedated for the pain. She is not lucid." "Perfect," Darlene said. The word hit me like a physical blow. Perfect. I mean, Darlene corrected herself quickly, realizing how that sounded. "It is better if she sleeps. I just need to sit with her. I need to make sure her affairs are in order. You know how these things are. The insurance, the billing. Someone responsible needs to take charge." "I cannot allow you to disturb her," Tanya insisted. "I am not going to disturb her," Darlene snapped, her patience vaporizing. "I am going to sit there and hold her hand. Now move, or I will have your license reported for obstructing a family emergency." There was a scuffle, the sound of a heavy purse hitting a wall, the squeak of rubber shoes. "Ma'am, step back," the guard warned. "Get your hands off me," Darlene shrieked. "That is assault. I am going in there. Carol, tell them to let me in." I lay perfectly still. I didn't twitch. I didn't breathe. I let the monitor beep its rhythmic, hypnotic song. Beep, beep, beep. I was a statue. I was a corpse. I was the bait. "Carol," she screamed again. Then, silence. A heavy, pregnant pause. "Fine," the guard said, sounding exhausted. 5 minutes. But if you wake her up, you are out. I don't care who you are." "Finally," Darlene huffed. The click-clack of her heels resumed. Louder now. Triumphant. "The incompetence in this place is staggering." The handle of the door turned slowly this time. The latch clicked. I felt the air pressure in the room change as the door swung open. The scent of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, heavy and cloying, drifted in, overpowering the smell of antiseptic. It was the smell of my childhood, the smell of fear, the smell of, "Fix this." Light from the hallway sliced across the floor. Cutting through the artificial twilight Tanya had created, it hit the foot of my bed. I didn't move. I kept my breathing shallow, my mouth slightly open, my eyes fixed behind their lids on that imaginary spot in my skull. "Oh, for God's sake," Darlene muttered. She stepped into the room. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing us in. It was just the two of us now, the predator and the prey, but for the first time in 32 years. She didn't know which one was which. She didn't rush to my side. She didn't touch my face. I heard the rustle of fabric as she set her purse down on the rolling table, the table where my water pitcher stood. "Carol?" she whispered. It was a test, a sharp, poking whisper. I didn't respond. "Carol, stop acting," she hissed. "I know you can hear me." I stayed limp. She sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of annoyance. "Unbelievable. You always have to make everything difficult." I heard the sound of a zipper. She was opening her purse. Then, I heard footsteps approaching the bed. Not the clicking heels. She must have been tiptoeing, but the soft shuffle of movement. She was standing right over me. I could feel her presence, a cold radiation. "Look at you," she murmured. "A mess. Just a mess." Her hand touched my arm. It wasn't a caress. She grabbed my wrist. She lifted my hand, the one with the pulse oximeter clipped to the finger. She wasn't checking my pulse. She was moving my arm. She was positioning me. I felt her other hand fumbling with something. A tablet? A phone? "Just one fingerprint," she whispered to herself. "That is all I need. Just one little touch. and we can stop this nonsense. She was going to use my unconscious hand to unlock her device. She was going to use my biometrics to bypass the security I had just set up. She was going to rob me while she thought I was dying. The anger that surged through me was so hot, so violent, that I thought it would burn the IV tubes right out of my veins. But I held it. I held it down deep. Not yet. I told myself, let her commit. Let her try. I felt the cold glass of a screen press against my thumb. Come on, she grunted, pressing my thumb down harder. Read it, you stupid machine. This was it, the violation, the proof. But she wasn't done. Miles, she said, her voice slightly louder, speaking to someone else. I froze internally. Miles? I hadn't heard the door open again. Had someone come in with her? Miles, get the notary in here, Darlene said, turning away from the bed slightly. She is out cold. We can do the signature now. Just put the pen in her hand and guide it. It counts if she is present. My blood ran cold. She hadn't just come to unlock a phone. She had brought a lawyer. She had brought a notary. She wasn't just here for the $3,900. She was here for everything. I am her mother, Darlene said, her voice echoing off the walls of the silent room. I have the right to protect her assets. She grabbed my hand again, harder this time. Wake up, Carol, she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. Or don't. It is actually easier if you don't. She pulled my hand toward the paper. That was the line. My eyes snapped open. I snapped my eyes open, but only for a fraction of a second, just long enough to see that Darlene wasn't alone. The silhouette of a man loomed in the doorway, blocking the harsh corridor light. It wasn't the security guard. It was a shape I recognized from a decade of bad decisions. The broad, sloping shoulders of a vulture in a bespoke suit. She is seizing, Darlene hissed, her hand clamping down hard on my wrist. Or she is waking up. Miles, get in here, quickly. I let my eyelids flutter shut, my head lolling to the side in a performance of fading consciousness that would have made my high school drama teacher proud. I couldn't confront them yet, not until I knew exactly what piece of paper they were holding. If I woke up now, it was just an argument. If I let them speak, it was evidence. The room filled with the scent of stale tobacco and peppermint breath mints, the olfactory signature of Miles Wexford. He was a family lawyer, in the same way a shark is a family pet. He specialized in divorce, estate disputes, and making uncomfortable problems disappear for the wealthy and morally flexible. He had represented Darlene in her divorce from my father, ensuring she got the house, the car, and the sympathy, while Dad got the debt. Is the notary ready? Darlene asked, her voice tight with urgency. He is right here, Miles said. His voice was smooth, oily, like grease sliding down a drain. Mr. Henderson, set up on the tray table. We have a narrow window of opportunity here. Is she aware? A third voice spoke up. It was shaky, nervous. This must be the notary. I cannot notarize a signature if the signee is not of sound mind. Ms. Hart, the state laws are very specific about capacity. Look at her, Miles interrupted, his tone dismissing the man's concern as a triviality. She is obviously incapacitated. That is the entire point of the emergency fiduciary protocol. We are not asking her to buy a timeshare. Henderson, we are executing a protective measure because she cannot act for herself. Darlene here is the next of kin. She is stepping in to prevent financial ruin. Do you want to be the reason a young mother loses her home because the bank froze her assets while she was in a coma? It was a masterclass in manipulation. Miles didn't use the law. He used the threat of consequence. Well, no, of course not, the notary stammered. But the document requires a thumbprint if she cannot sign. She has thumbs, Darlene snapped. Get the ink pad, or the tablet, whatever you use. I lay there, my body rigid under the thin hospital sheet, every muscle screaming to fight. But my mind held the line. Wait, I told myself, wait for the confession. Where is the other one? Darlene asked. Sloan, get in here and close the door. Stop looking at the nurses. My sister. Of course. Sloan entered the room. I could tell it was her by the sound of her breathing, short, agitated breaths, and the rustle of her coat. Sloan was 3 years older than me, and 10 years more bitter. She had spent her life waiting for the world to hand her the success I had worked 80-hour weeks to earn. To Sloan, my career wasn't a result of effort. It was a cosmic injustice that she deserved to rectify. God, she looks terrible, Sloan said. There was no pity in her voice, only a detached observation, like someone inspecting a dented car bumper. Her face is all swollen. You were right to worry. Mom, she looks like she's halfway out the door. Don't say that, Darlene said. But she didn't sound upset. She sounded vindicated. Just help me find her phone. The nurse must have put it somewhere. I checked the drawers, Sloan said, her voice moving closer to the bed. I felt a hand patting the mattress near my hip. Searching, invading. It's not here. Maybe that nurse took it. Forget the phone for a second, Miles commanded. Focus on the tablet. We need to authorize the transfer of the power of attorney before the hospital administration starts asking for paperwork we do not have. Darlene, the banking app requires biometric verification to add a new administrator, correct? Yes, Darlene said. It asks for a fingerprint or a face scan to approve large changes. She set it up that way. Paranoiac. It is not paranoia if it stops you. I thought, okay, Miles said. Here is the plan. We execute the emergency guardianship document first. That gives you legal cover. Then, we use her thumb to unlock the banking portal on your tablet, since we cannot find her phone, and we approve the transfer of funds into the Hart Family Trust. The Hart Family Trust. I almost choked on my own spit. There was no trust. There was just a shell account Miles had likely set up an hour ago to funnel my savings into a black hole where Darlene could access them without my permission. They weren't just trying to pay for a plane ticket anymore. They were liquidating me. They were staging a hostile takeover of my life while my body was still warm. Is this strictly legal? The notary asked again. Using the biometric data of an unconscious person? It is implied consent, Miles lied smoothly. She is the daughter, Darlene is the mother. In the absence of a husband, the husband is outside, Sloan interrupted. Gavin is downstairs. If he comes up here, he's going to blow this whole thing up. He is soft, but he is annoying. That is why we hurry, Darlene said. Miles, give me the wipe. I felt something cold and wet touch my right hand. Darlene was cleaning my thumb. She was wiping away the dried blood and the grime of the accident. She was preparing the instrument. It was the most violating sensation I had ever felt. It wasn't pain. It was worse. It was the feeling of being reduced to an object. I wasn't Carol Rutherford, senior risk analyst. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't a wife. I was a key. I was a severed finger in a spy movie, being used to open a vault. Okay, Darlene muttered, her breath hot near my ear as she leaned over. Tablet is ready. Open the app. Miles, select Restore Linked Accounts and add Administrator. When the prompt comes up, bring it here. Ready, Miles said. Scanning for biometrics. Hold her hand steady, Sloan said. She's twitching. I have her, Darlene said. Her grip on my wrist tightened. Her nails digging into my skin. She was hurting me, and she didn't care. She was completely focused on the screen. I could hear the hum of the tablet. I could sense the glass screen hovering inches from my skin. Okay, Darlene whispered. Just one touch. Just for the family. Carol, you owe us this. You owe me. You owe me. The phrase echoed in my head. It was the anthem of my childhood. I owed her for the piano lessons I hated. I owed her for the college tuition I paid myself. I owed her for the air I breathed. The glass touched the tip of my thumb. No. The word didn't start in my throat. It started in my gut. It started in the part of me that had been silenced for 32 years. I didn't just move. I exploded. I yanked my hand back with a force that sent a shockwave of agony through my broken ribs, but the adrenaline drowned it out. My eyes flew open, not the groggy, fluttering eyelids of a victim, but the wide, searing stare of a predator. I sat up. The motion was violent, sudden. I ripped the oxygen cannula from my nose and threw it aside. "Get your hands off me!" The scream tore out of my throat, raw and guttural. The reaction in the room was instantaneous and chaotic. Darlene shrieked and jumped back. Colliding with the rolling tray table, Sloane gasped, stumbling backward, her heels slipping on the linoleum, and the tablet she had been reaching for clattered to the floor. The notary, Mr. Henderson, dropped his stamp. It bounced with a hollow thud. But Miles Wexford? Miles froze. He was a professional snake. But even snakes flinch when the corpse sits up. He stood there, holding a stack of legal documents, his mouth hanging open in a perfect O of shock. The room fell into a terrified silence. The only sound was my own breathing, harsh, ragged, heaving against the pain in my chest. I looked at them. I looked at my mother, clutching her chest in fake terror. I looked at my sister, whose eyes were darting around the room looking for an exit. I looked at the lawyer who had just tried to legalize my robbery. "Carol?" Darlene stammered. Her face had gone from flush to a sickly shade of gray. You're awake. Oh, thank God. We were so worried. We thought—" "Stop," I said. My voice wasn't loud anymore. It was low. It was the voice I used when I told a CEO that his CFO was embezzling millions. It was the voice of absolute, undeniable fact. Do not speak. Do not lie. Do not say another word. I turned my gaze to the notary. He was trembling, backing away toward the wall. "You?" I said, pointing a shaking finger at him. "Mr. Henderson, was it? You asked if I was of sound mind. You asked if I had capacity." I did," he stuttered. I was just following instructions. "I am fully conscious," I said, enunciating every syllable. "I am fully aware, and I just witnessed 3 people conspiring to bypass my biometric security to access federal banking institutions without my consent. That is wire fraud. That is identity theft. And since you are a notary public, your presence here makes it a conspiracy." The color drained from Mr. Henderson's face so fast he looked like a ghost. "I didn't know," he cried. "They told me you were in a coma. I'm leaving. I am not part of this." "Stay right there," Miles barked, trying to regain control. He stepped forward, putting on his lawyer mask, though it was slipping. "Carol, you are confused. You have been through a severe trauma. We were simply executing a protective order to ensure your mortgage was paid. You are hallucinating the context." "Hallucinating?" I let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I heard you, Miles. I heard emergency fiduciary protocol. I heard Hart Family Trust. I heard you tell my mother to use my thumb because I was incapacitated. Do you know what the penalty is for coercing a signature from a hospitalized patient? Do you know what the penalty is for accessing a protected financial system with a stolen biometric?" I looked at Sloane. She was pressing herself against the door, terrified. "And you?" I said to her. "You didn't check if I was alive. You checked the drawers for my phone." "I was looking for your insurance card," Sloane yelled, her defense reflex kicking in. "You are crazy. We are trying to help you." "Help me?" I grabbed the bed railing, pulling myself more upright despite the fire in my ribs. "You were trying to skin me alive." Darlene stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. The shock was wearing off, replaced by the familiar rage she used to control me. "How dare you?" she hissed. "How dare you speak to me like that? I am your mother. I have been standing here terrified for your life, and you play this sick game? Pretending to be asleep? Entrapping your own family? It's not a trap if you aren't doing anything wrong." "Mom," I said. "I have rights," she screamed, pointing at me. "I have the right to manage this family's affairs. You are my child. Everything you have is because of me. If I need to sign a paper to keep this family afloat, I will sign it, and you will thank me." She lunged for the tablet on the floor. "Don't touch it," I warned. "I will touch whatever I want," she spat. She grabbed the device and stood up, her face twisted in a snarl. "Miles, give me the paper. I am signing it as her guardian. She is delirious. Look at her. She is hysterical." "I wouldn't do that. Darlene." A deep, gravelly voice resonated from the doorway. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Darlene froze. Miles turned around slowly, looking like a man facing a firing squad. The door, which Sloane had been guarding, swung open, pushing her aside. Standing there was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and aged in oak barrels. He was leaning on a cane, but he didn't look frail. He looked like an avalanche waiting to happen. He was wearing a fishing vest over a button-down shirt, looking completely out of place in a sterile hospital, yet somehow commanding the entire building. Edmund Rutherford, my grandfather. Behind him stood 2 large hospital security guards and a uniformed police officer. Edmund didn't look at me. He didn't look at Sloane. His steel-gray eyes were locked directly on Miles Wexford. "Hello, Miles," Edmund said calmly. "It has been a while. I see you are still chasing ambulances." "Judge Rutherford," Miles said, his voice cracking slightly on the title. We were just leaving." "No, you weren't," Edmund said. He stepped into the room, the cane tapping a heavy rhythm on the floor. Thud, thud. He held up a blue legal folder. It wasn't thick, but it looked heavy. "You were just explaining to my granddaughter why you are attempting to execute a power of attorney document that was superseded 5 years ago." Darlene dropped the tablet. It hit the floor with a crack. "What?" she whispered. Edmund looked at her then. The look wasn't angry. It was disappointed. It was the look of a man who had expected nothing and was still let down. "You don't have power of attorney, Darlene," Edmund said. "Carol signed a durable power of attorney for health care and finances the day she found out she was pregnant with Maisie. She revoked your rights 5 years ago." He tossed the blue folder onto the bed next to my legs. "I am the one with the power of attorney," Edmund said. "And I am the one pressing charges." The blue legal folder sat on the white hospital sheet like a loaded gun. For a moment, nobody moved. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic, indifferent beeping of the heart monitor, counting out the seconds of a silence that felt heavy enough to crush bones. My grandfather, Edmund Rutherford, did not shout. He did not wave his arms. He simply stood there, leaning on his cane with both hands, looking at the people in the room with the weary, dangerous patience of a man who had spent 40 years watching liars try to talk their way out of handcuffs. "Pick it up, Miles," Edmund said. His voice was low, a rumble of gravel in a deep canyon. "Read the date. Read the seal." Miles Wexford hesitated. He looked at Darlene, then at the police officer standing behind Edmund, and finally at the folder, with a hand that was visibly trembling. He reached out and flipped the cover open. I watched his eyes scan the document. I saw the exact moment his throat bobbed in a hard swallow. This is dated 5 years ago," Miles said, his voice thin. "February 14th, 2021. "Correct," Edmund said. "The day Carol found out she was pregnant with Maisie, she came to my office. She was worried about what would happen to her child if something happened to her. She was worried about who would control her finances, her medical decisions, and her estate." Edmund's eyes shifted to Darlene, cold and unyielding. "She was specifically worried about you. Darlene, she explicitly excluded you from every decision-making process regarding her life and her daughter's life." Darlene's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. "That is a lie," she spat. "Carol would never do that. We are best friends. We have no secrets." "Read paragraph 4, Miles," Edmund commanded. Miles cleared his throat, sweat beading on his forehead. "It says, I, Carol Rutherford, strictly prohibit Darlene Hart from acting as my agent, guardian, or representative in any capacity. citing a history of financial coercion and boundary violations. The words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. I remembered signing that paper. I remembered sitting in Edmund's study, pregnant and terrified, crying because I felt guilty for locking my mother out. Edmund had handed me a tissue and told me that protecting my child meant protecting myself. I had signed it, filed it, and then, in the chaos of new motherhood, I had almost forgotten it existed, but Edmund hadn't. Edmund never forgot anything. "This document is on file with the county clerk," Edmund continued. "It is on file with the hospital administration, which I just visited before coming up here, and it is durable. It survives incapacity. So, Mr. Wexford, when you walked into this room with a notary and a blank check, you weren't just bypassing hospital policy, you were attempting to override a court-registered legal instrument." Miles closed the folder. He looked like he wanted to vanish into the floor tiles. "Judge Rutherford," Miles began, putting on his best conciliatory smile, though it looked more like a grimace. "Please, we had a misunderstanding of the current legal standing. Darlene was frantic. She was acting out of maternal instinct. We were simply trying to ensure Carol's mortgage didn't default while she was indisposed. It was a good faith effort." "Good faith?" Edmund repeated. The word sounded like a curse. "You brought a mobile notary into a trauma ward to extract a fingerprint from an unconscious woman. You attempted to access a federal banking institution using biometric bypass. In my courtroom. Miles, we didn't call that good faith. We called that conspiracy to commit wire fraud." Edmund turned his head slightly toward the police officer. "Officer Miller, you have the statements from the nursing staff?" "Yes, sir," the officer said. Stepping forward, he was young, serious, and looked entirely unimpressed by Darlene's Chanel suit. Nurse Tanya provided a written statement. She witnessed the suspects refusing to leave, making threats, and attempting to physically manipulate the patient's hand onto a digital device while the patient appeared comatose. "And the patient," the officer looked at me, his expression softening. "Ma'am, are you alert? Do you understand what is happening?" "I am alert," I said. My voice was stronger now, bolstered by the presence of the two men who actually protected me, my grandfather and the law. "I did not consent to any of this. I did not ask for them to come here. I explicitly asked for them to be barred." "That is coercion," the officer said, pulling a notepad from his belt. "And with the financial intent, it is attempted grand larceny." "Oh, stop it!" Darlene shrieked. The sudden noise made everyone flinch except Edmund. She stomped her foot, the heel clicking sharply. "This is ridiculous. I am her mother. You are treating me like a criminal for trying to help my own daughter manage her money. She is ungrateful. She is confused." She pointed a manicured finger at me. "Carol, tell them. Tell them I handle your bills. Tell them we do this all the time." I looked at her, really looked at her, for years. That screaming voice had made me crumble. It had made me open my wallet just to make the noise stop. But today, with my broken ribs and my unlinked bank account, the noise didn't scare me. It just sounded pathetic. "We don't do this all the time, Mom," I said calmly. "You do this, you take, I give, and today, the bank is closed." "You little witch," she hissed. "That is enough," Edmund said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his own phone. He didn't look at Darlene. He looked at Miles. "You might want to call your malpractice carrier. Miles, you are going to need them." Then, Edmund dialed a number. He put the phone on speaker and held it out, like he was presenting evidence to a jury. "Rutherford Family Trust. Verification code Alpha 9 Zulu 4. Edmund spoke clearly into the device. "Identity confirmed. Trustee Rutherford." A crisp, automated voice answered. "Please state your command." "Initiate protocol lockdown on all beneficiary disbursements regarding Carol Rutherford," Edmund said. "Reason: active fraud attempt by immediate family members. Flag all authorization requests from Darlene Hart or Sloan Hart as hostile." "Confirmed," the voice said. "Lockdown active. Fraud alert sent to credit bureaus. Do you wish to notify the local precinct? We are already here, Edmund said, and hung up. The silence that followed was absolute. Darlene looked as if she had been slapped. The color drained from her face, leaving her makeup looking like a mask on a corpse. You locked the trust? She whispered. Edmund, you can't. That is my living allowance. That is my money. It is the family's money, Edmund corrected. And you are no longer family. You are a liability. In the corner of the room, near the door, I saw movement. It was Sloane. While everyone was watching Edmund, my sister had quietly crouched down. Her hand was inching toward the tablet that Darlene had dropped, the tablet that contained the open banking app, the failed biometric scan, and the digital timestamp of their crime. Don't do it, Sloane, I said. Sloane froze, her hand hovering inches from the device. Officer, Edmund said, not even turning his head. The device on the floor, it contains the forensic evidence of the attempted access. I suggest you secure it before it undergoes a factory reset. Sloane snatched the tablet up, her fingers flying across the screen. I'm just turning it off, she yelled, panic rising in her voice. It's my iPad. You can't take my iPad. The police officer moved faster than I expected for a man of his size. He crossed the room in 2 strides and clamped a hand over Sloane's wrist. Ma'am, put the device down, he ordered. That is now material evidence in an active investigation. No, Sloane screamed, struggling. It has my personal stuff on it. You can't look at it. Sloane, give it to him, Miles barked. The lawyer knew the game was over. Resisting police seizure was a felony he couldn't talk his way out of. Give him the damn tablet. Do not make this worse. Sloane let out a sob of frustration and shoved the tablet into the officer's chest. Fine, take it. It doesn't prove anything. We didn't steal anything because the stupid thumbprint didn't work. Attempt is a crime, Sloane, I said softly. You don't have to succeed to be guilty. Sloane glared at me. It was a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. You did this, she spat. You planned this. You lay there pretending to be asleep just to trap us. You are sick, Carol. You are a psychopath. I am a risk analyst, I corrected, and I just mitigated the risk. Edmund tapped his cane on the floor again, signaling the end of the circus. Officer Miller, I believe these 3 individuals have overstayed their welcome. The hospital administration has already issued a no trespass order for Darlene Hart and Sloane Hart. I would like them removed from the premises immediately. With pleasure, Officer Miller said. He gestured toward the door. Ladies, gentlemen, let's go. The hallway is this way. Miles Wexford straightened his tie, trying to salvage some shred of dignity. He looked at Edmund. I will be contacting you regarding the misunderstanding about my role in this, Judge. You will be hearing from the Bar Association. Miles, Edmund replied, save your breath for the Ethics Committee. Miles walked out, his head down, defeat radiating from his slumped shoulders. The notary had already fled the moment the door opened, likely halfway to the parking lot by now. Sloane followed, wiping her nose with her sleeve, shooting one last venomous look at me before disappearing into the corridor. But Darlene didn't move. She stood at the foot of my bed, her hands gripping the plastic railing so hard her knuckles were white. She wasn't looking at Edmund. She wasn't looking at the officer. She was looking at me. Her eyes were dry. The hysteria was gone, replaced by something colder, something harder. It was the look she used to give me when I was a teenager, and I wanted to go to a friend's house instead of cleaning her closet. It was the look of ownership. You think you are clever, Darlene said. Her voice was low, trembling with suppressed rage. You think because you have a job and a husband and a grandfather to hide behind, that you are free? I am free, I said. The account is unlinked. Mom, it is over. It is not over, she said. She leaned in, her face contorting. Do you know what I gave up for you? Do you know what my life could have been if I hadn't been saddled with a brat at 22? I could have been a model. I could have married a CEO. I could have been someone. You are someone, I said. You are a mother. That used to be enough for me. Why wasn't it enough for you? Enough? She laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. Being a mother is a job. Carol, it is labor. It is 18 years of servitude. And you? You think you can just walk away without paying the bill? I have paid, I said, my voice rising. I have paid since I was 16. I paid for your car. I paid for your vacations. I paid for this suit you are wearing right now. I have paid $300,000 in the last 5 years alone. Mom, I checked the numbers. I paid. That wasn't payment, she screamed, lunging forward, though the bed rail kept her back. That was interest. That was the minimum payment on the debt you owe me for your existence. I gave you life. You owe me everything. You owe me your youth because I gave you mine. The officer stepped forward, grabbing Darlene's arm. Ma'am, that is enough. You are leaving now. Get off me, she yelled, shaking him off, but he grabbed her tighter. Carol, she screamed as she was dragged backward toward the door. You are ungrateful. You are a thief. You stole my life. I am taking it back, I whispered. She was at the doorway now, her heels skidding on the floor as she fought the officer. She braced herself against the doorframe, turning back for one final strike. She wanted to leave a scar. She wanted to say something that would haunt me in the dark, something that would make me open the wallet again just to prove I was good. Her eyes locked onto mine, burning with malice. You think that money matters? She spat. That money is rent. Carol, it is rent for the body I built for you. It is rent for the milk I fed you. You are nothing but a tenant in a life I own, and I am evicting you. The words hit me like a physical slap. Rent. She didn't see me as a daughter. She saw me as a property she had developed and was now trying to collect on. It was the most horrific, honest thing she had ever said. She was dragged into the hallway, her screams echoing down the corridor until the heavy door swung shut, sealing the sound away. The silence rushed back in. But this time, it felt different. It didn't feel heavy. It felt clean. I sat there, breathing hard, the pain in my ribs a dull fire. I looked at the closed door. I replayed her words in my head. Rent. Edmund moved then. He walked slowly to the side of the bed, his cane tapping softly. He reached out and placed his large, rough hand over mine. His hand was warm. It was steady. It was the hand that had taught me to fish. It was the hand that had signed the papers to get me into college when she refused. He looked at the door where she had vanished, his expression unreadable, like a mountain staring at a passing storm. Then he looked down at me. His eyes were wet. Rent, Edmund repeated softly, testing the word on his tongue like it was poison. He shook his head slowly. He squeezed my hand, a pressure that said more than 1,000 legal documents ever could. That is enough, Edmund said, and for the first time in 32 years. I believed it, but then... Edmund's phone buzzed in his pocket. He ignored it. It buzzed again, and again, a rapid staccato of notifications. He frowned, pulling the phone out. He looked at the screen, and his thick white eyebrows pulled together in a deep V. What is it? I asked, my heart skipping a beat. Is it her? Is she texting? No, Edmund said slowly. It is the bank, the fraud alert system. He tapped the screen, his face growing darker with every second. What does it say? I demanded, pushing myself up. Edmund looked at me, and the look on his face was one I had never seen before. It was fear. We blocked her access to your checking account, Edmund said quietly. And we blocked the trust. But Carol, the alert says there is a request for a change of authorization on a different account. What different account? I asked. I don't have another account. It is a credit line, Edmund read. A home equity line of credit, $50,000, approved 5 minutes ago. I don't have a home equity line, I said. I rent my apartment. I don't own a home. Edmund looked up at me, and the air in the room went ice cold. The request didn't come from your apartment, Edmund said. It came from a property registered in your name, a property at 114 Oak Street. My blood froze. 114 Oak Street. That was my mother's address. She put the deed in your name, Edmund whispered. She put the deed in your name, but kept the mortgage in hers. She just took a loan out against a house you didn't know you owned. The cliffhanger wasn't just emotional anymore, it was structural. She hadn't just tried to steal my cash, she had framed me for her debt. Edmund looked at me, his eyes hardening into steel. She didn't just want the rent, he said. She mortgaged the tenant. The days that followed in the Seabrook Regional Medical Center were not measured in hours or medication doses. They were measured in spreadsheets, while my broken ribs knit together in a slow, agonizing process that made every sneeze feel like a gunshot. My mind was operating at a velocity that frightened even the nurses. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't read magazines. I asked Edmund to bring me my laptop. "Are you sure?" he had asked, setting the silver device on my tray table like he was handing a weapon to a soldier. "I need to see the damage," I had said. And so, we began the excavation. It wasn't just a review of my finances. It was an autopsy of my entire adult life. Edmund sat in the uncomfortable vinyl chair by the window. His reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, a yellow legal pad on his knee. I sat propped up in bed, typing with my left hand because my right was still too sore from the IV lines and the phantom pressure of Darlene's grip. We started with the knowns, the checking account, the savings, the joint account with Gavin. But then we started looking for the unknowns. "Pull up your credit report," Edmund said on the second morning. "The full one, not the summary the banking app gives you. Go to the Federal Bureau site." I navigated to the site, answered the security questions. What was the make of your first car? What is your street address? And waited for the wheel to spin. When the report loaded, it was 80 pages long. 80 pages, I whispered. I'm 32 years old. I have a mortgage and a car lease. It should be 10 pages. Scroll down to Open Lines of Credit, Edmund instructed. I scrolled, and as I did, the room seemed to tilt. There, nestled between my student loans and my actual credit card, was an account labeled First Horizon Bank, checking/overdraft line. I don't bank with First Horizon, I said. I clicked on the details. Date opened, October 12th, 2011. I did the math in my head. October 12th, 2011. That was my 18th birthday, I said, my voice sounding hollow. I was a freshman in college. I was in a dorm room 3 hours away. Look at the contact information, Edmund said. I expanded the tab. Primary account holder, Carol Rutherford. Mailing address, 114 Oak Street. Phone number, 555-0199. That's her cell number, I said. And her address. I logged into the bank's portal using the Forgot Password feature, verifying my identity with my social security number, the one number she couldn't change. When I finally got in, I saw the history. It wasn't just an empty account, it was a highway. For 14 years, money had moved through this account like water through a sluice. There were deposits from Venmo Cash Out and PayPal Transfer. There were withdrawals for Nail Salon, Liquor Barn, Delta Airlines, and Nordstrom. But the most chilling part wasn't the spending, it was the funding. Edmund, I said, pointing at the screen, look at the dates of the deposits. He leaned in, squinting. January 15th, deposit, $2,000. January 15th, withdrawal, $2,000. February 1st, deposit, $2,000. February 1st, withdrawal, $1,950. It matches my pay cycle, I realized, the nausea rising in my throat. When I got my first job at the coffee shop, when I got my internship, when I got hired at Brighthaven, every time I got paid, I would transfer a contribution to her main account, thinking I was helping. But look, I traced the lines on the screen. She wasn't just taking what I sent her. She was moving money from this account to cover her own overdrafts. then paying this account off with cash deposits from God knows where, probably borrowing from Sloan, just long enough to keep it from flagging, then draining it again. It was a shell game, a Ponzi scheme, where the only investor was her daughter. She used your social security number to open a secondary liquidity fund the day you became a legal adult, Edmund said. His voice was flat, clinical, the voice of a judge reading a verdict. She didn't give you a birthday cake, Carol. She gave you a debt anchor. There is more, I said. I was clicking faster now, fueled by a cold, morbid curiosity. I needed to see the bottom of the pit. I went back to the credit report. Ashley Furniture Home Store, installment loan, status, active, balance, $4,300. I have never bought furniture from Ashley Home Store, I said. All my furniture is IKEA or secondhand. I clicked the View Contract link. A PDF downloaded. I opened it. There, at the bottom of the page, was a digital signature. Carol Rutherford. Timestamp. August 4th, 2024. 11:30 ante-meridium. August 4th, I murmured. Where was I on August 4th? I opened my calendar app on my phone. I scrolled back 2 years. August 4th. Maisie's second birthday party. Backyard BBQ. I remembered that day. Darlene had come late. She had complained about the heat. She had sat in the corner on her iPad the whole time, claiming she was handling work emails. She financed a leather sectional sofa while she was eating my daughter's birthday cake, I said. She used my name to buy a couch while I was lighting the candles. Gavin walked in then. He looked exhausted. He was carrying 2 cardboard cups of coffee and a bag of bagels. His shirt wrinkled as if he had slept in it. He stopped at the door, seeing the laptops, the legal pads, the look of absolute devastation on my face. What did you find? He asked. He didn't ask if we found anything. He knew. She has a credit card in my name, I said, not looking up. Limit $15,000, maxed out, and a furniture loan, and a secret checking account she opened when I was 18. Gavin set the coffee down slowly. He pulled up a chair next to Edmund. He didn't look surprised. He looked guilty. Carol, he said quietly, I need to tell you something. I didn't want to say it while you were still in the ICU, but if we are doing this, we need to do it all. I turned to him. What is it? 2 months ago, Gavin said, staring at his hands. When you were on that business trip to Chicago, Darlene came over to watch Maisie for a few hours while I went to the dentist. Okay, I said. When I came back, she had papers on the kitchen table. Gavin said. She was all smiles. She had made lasagna. She said she was worried about us. She said that since you travel for work, and I have a dangerous job, I'm a landscape architect. Carol, I plant trees. She thought it would be smart to have a backup guardian for Maisie. My blood ran cold. A guardian? She had a form, Gavin continued. It was a temporary delegated guardianship form. She said it was just for emergencies, like if we were both in a car crash. She could pick Maisie up from school without the police getting involved. She made it sound so logical. She said she just needed my signature because you had already discussed it. I never discussed that with her, I said. I know, Gavin said. That is why I didn't sign. I told her I would wait until you got home. She got angry. She threw the lasagna in the trash and left. She told me I was endangering my child with my ego. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to cause a fight between you two. I thought she was just being Darlene. She wasn't being Darlene, Edmund said from the window. She was being a predator. Edmund stood up. He walked over to the whiteboard on the wall, the one the nurses used to write goal for the day, walked to bathroom, and wiped it clean with his sleeve. He picked up a dry erase marker. Here is the timeline, Edmund said, drawing a long black line. 2011. Open secret account using Carol's SSN. 2021. Carol signs. Power of attorney to Edmund. Darlene ignores this. 2024. Identity theft for furniture loan. 2025. Attempted legal guardianship seizure of Maisie. 2026. The hospital incident. Attempted biometric theft. Discovery of the house deed fraud. Edmund stepped back. The list looked like an indictment. She isn't just bad with money. Carol, Edmund said. This isn't about her being a shopaholic or bad at math. This is systemic. This is a business model. He turned to look at me. His eyes were hard, flinty. They don't live off you, Edmund said. They are building a house with your bones. Every time you get a promotion, they refinance. Every time you save $1, they leverage it. They have turned your existence into a commodity. I looked at the whiteboard. I looked at the debts that weren't mine, the loans I never asked for, the permissions I never gave. For years, I had told myself it was just money. I told myself I could always make more. I told myself that family was messy, and Darlene had had a hard life, and Sloan was just lost. But looking at the data, I realized the truth. It wasn't messy. It was precise. It was calculated. The furniture loan was timed to a birthday. The account opening was timed to my legal adulthood. The hospital raid was timed to my physical incapacitation. I wasn't a daughter. I was a resource. And resources don't get love. Resources get exploited until they are depleted. We need to call the police again, Gavin said. We need to report the furniture loan. No, I said. Gavin and Edmund both looked at me. Carol, Gavin said, this is $40,000 of fraud. We have to report it. We will report it, I said. But not just as fraud. I am not going to just file a police report and let Miles Wexford plea it down to a misdemeanor family dispute. I am going to dismantle the house. I pulled the laptop closer. The pain in my ribs flared. Sharp and hot. But I ignored it. I want the bank statements from the Oak Street house, I said to Edmund. The house she put in my name. If the deed is in my name, I have the right to see the mortgage payments. I want to know who is paying the lender. I can get that, Edmund said. I can have the subpoena ready by morning. Good, I said. And I want a forensic audit of the trust. If she was stealing from me, she was stealing from the estate. If we can prove she violated the terms of the trust, we don't just evict her. We claw back every cent she has received for the last 20 years. That is the nuclear option, Edmund warned. If you do that, she is destitute. She will be on the street. I thought about the phone call in the ambulance. $3,900, or I'm not getting on the plane. I thought about the furniture loan signed while I was lighting Maisie's birthday candles. I thought about the fingerprint on the tablet while I lay in a hospital bed. She isn't on the street, I said. She is in a house she bought with my credit. She is sitting on a sofa she bought with my name. She is wearing clothes she bought with my paycheck. I looked Edmund in the eye. Push the button, I said. Go nuclear. Edmund nodded. A slow, grim smile touched the corners of his mouth. I was hoping you would say that. We worked for 3 more hours. Gavin went to pick up Maisie. The nurses came in to check my vitals and left quickly, sensing the static electricity in the room. Around 6 o'clock in the evening, my phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the bank. The subject line was red. Urgent. Security alert. Attempted change of authorization. My heart hammered against my ribs. I clicked it open. Dear Ms. Rutherford, we detected a new request to modify the authorized users list on your account ending in 8842. Time of request. Today, January 30th, 2026, 5:45 post-meridium. Status, blocked per verbal duress protocol. Device ID, Apple iPad Pro. Sloan's iPad. Location, 114 Oak Street. I stared at the screen. They tried again, I whispered. Edmund looked up from his legal pad. What? They are at the house, I said. They are at Oak Street right now, and they just tried to access the account again, using Sloan's iPad. They know we seized the tablet at the hospital, Edmund said. They must be using a backup from the cloud. They are desperate. Read the rest, I said, scrolling down. There is a note attached to the request. In the reason for change field on the digital form, a field usually left blank or filled with family access, someone had typed a message. It was a message meant for the bank teller, but they must have known I would see the alert. It wasn't a request. It was a taunt. Reason: custodial rights recovery. The daughter is mentally unstable. She is doubling down, I said. She is trying to claim I am insane to override the power of attorney. Edmund stood up, snapping his legal pad shut. She just handed us the last nail for the coffin. Filing a false statement to a financial institution regarding the mental capacity of an account holder is a federal crime. Wait, I said. I was looking at the timestamp again. 5:45 post-meridium. Edmund, I said slowly, if they are at the Oak Street house, and they are using the Wi-Fi there to send this, yes? That house is in my name, I said. The deed is in my name. The utilities are likely in my name if I check hard enough. Correct, Edmund said. That means, I said, a cold realization washing over me, that I am the landlord, and I have the legal right to inspect my property, especially if I suspect illegal activity is being conducted on the premises. I looked at the hospital gown I was wearing. I looked at the IV line in my arm. I am getting discharged tomorrow, I said. Carol, Edmund started. You have broken ribs. I can walk, I said. And I have a house to inspect. They will not let you in, Edmund said. They won't have a choice, I said. Because I'm not going alone, and I'm not going to knock. I turned the laptop screen toward him. I just got an alert from the smart home system. I lied. Or rather, I bluffed. I didn't have a smart home system there. But Darlene did. She had installed a Ring doorbell and interior cameras last year to watch the cleaning lady, and if the account was linked to the Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi was paid for by the credit card in my name, I typed quickly, guessing, user, Carol Rutherford, password, cinnamon123. It didn't work. I tried again. User, Darlene Hart, password, Darlene, is the best, access denied. I closed my eyes. Think, what would she use? What is the one thing she cares about? User, Darlene Hart, password, first class. The screen flashed green, loading cameras. My breath hitched. The video feed popped up. It was a live view of the living room at Oak Street. I saw Darlene. She was pacing back and forth, holding a glass of wine. I saw Sloane. She was sitting on the sofa, the leather sectional I apparently owned, frantically typing on an iPad. And then I saw the third person. He was sitting in the armchair, his head in his hands. It wasn't Miles Wexford. It was a man I hadn't seen in 20 years. Edmund, I whispered, the blood draining from my face. Look who they brought in. Edmund looked at the screen. He went still. My God, he whispered. They dug him up. It was my father, the useless deadbeat Darlene had spent my entire life cursing, the man who supposedly abandoned us. He was sitting in my living room, and Darlene was handing him a pen. Cliffhanger. They weren't just forging a signature, they were rewriting history. The morning I was discharged from Seabrook Regional, the air in the room had changed. It was no longer the stale, antiseptic atmosphere of a hospital room where a victim lay recovering. It had transformed into a forward operating base. My grandfather, Edmund, had made a call the previous night. Right after we saw my father sitting on the living room sofa on the security camera feed. He didn't call the police again. He called Renee Calder. If Miles Wexford was a vulture who fed on the dead, Renee Calder was a peregrine falcon who hunted the living. She walked into my hospital room at 7 a.m. wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, carrying a briefcase that looked like it contained nuclear codes. She didn't offer sympathy. She didn't ask how my ribs felt. She walked straight to the whiteboard where Edmund had drawn the timeline of fraud, studied it for 30 seconds, and then turned to me. You have a leak, Renee said. Her voice was crisp, efficient. We are going to patch it, and then we are going to flood the house. I liked her immediately. They brought my father back, I said, sitting on the edge of the bed. dressed in the sweatpants Gavin had brought me. I haven't seen him in 20 years. Darlene has spent 2 decades telling me he was a monster who abandoned us. Now he is sitting in her living room, signing papers. He is a prop, Renee said, dismissing the emotional weight of a lost parent with a wave of her hand. Darlene knows the power of attorney you signed for Edmund is solid. She knows the biometrics failed. So she is pivoting to a character attack. She is bringing in the estranged father to testify that you are mentally unstable and that he, as a concerned parent, supports her guardianship. It is a classic muddy-the-waters strategy. It won't work, Edmund rumbled from the corner. It won't work because we aren't going to argue about feelings, Renee corrected. We are going to argue about felonies. She opened her briefcase and laid out a stack of documents. We are filing for an emergency temporary restraining order, she said, but not the standard kind. We are filing a financial protection order. We are freezing them out. Carol, we are asking the court to bar Darlene Hart, Sloan Hart, and any associates, including this new guest at the house, from accessing, liquidating, or leveraging any asset attached to your Social Security number. She will violate it, I said. She thinks rules are suggestions. I'm counting on it, Renee smiled. It was a terrifying smile. In civil court, violating an order is annoying. In criminal court, it is contempt. I want her to break the rule. I want her to snap it in half. We spent the next 2 hours assembling the warhead. We didn't just submit a complaint. We submitted a forensic dossier. I provided the logs from the hospital, the restricted access request, Tanya's written statement about the coerced signature, and the timestamp of the attempted biometric unlock. Then came the banking data. The internal investigation team at my bank, prompted by the verbal duress password Cinnamon, had worked overnight. The report they sent was beautiful in its brutality. It tracked the IP addresses of every failed login attempt. It showed the attempt from the hospital Wi-Fi. It showed the attempt from Sloane's iPad at the house. It showed a third attempt, at 3 a.m, from a device registered as Darlene's iPhone, trying to reset my email password to gain access to the bank verification codes. This is not a misunderstanding, Renee noted, highlighting the row. This is a relentless cyber attack originating from a domestic location. We are going to frame it exactly like that. This isn't a mother trying to pay a bill. This is a hacker trying to breach a firewall. I signed the affidavits. My hand was steady. The pain in my ribs was still there, a dull ache that spiked every time I took a deep breath. But I used it. The pain kept me sharp. It reminded me that this wasn't a game. One more thing, Renee said, pulling a separate sheet of paper. We are serving Sloan at her place of employment. I paused. At her job? Sloan worked as a junior coordinator at a logistics firm. She was terrified of her boss. She spent half her life trying to curate an image of professional success to mask the chaos of her personal finances. The device she used to attempt the second hack, Renee said, pointing to the log. The iPad Pro, the MAC address is registered to her employer's corporate fleet. She used company property to attempt to defraud a federal bank. If you serve her there, I said, she will be fired. HR will see the subpoena regarding misuse of digital assets. She made the choice to use the device, Renee said simply. She involved her company. I am just notifying them. I looked at the paper. I thought about Sloan standing in the hospital room, checking the drawers for my phone instead of checking my pulse. I thought about her watching Darlene wipe my thumb to steal my fingerprint. Do it, I said. By noon, the offensive had begun. I went home with Gavin and Maisie to a temporary rental apartment Edmund had secured for us. A quiet place with a security gate, far away from Oak Street. I didn't want to go back to the apartment we had lived in before. Darlene had a key to that, and even though we could change the locks, I couldn't change the memories of her barging in whenever she felt like it. I set up my laptop on the dining table. I was supposed to be resting, but I couldn't sleep. I was too wired. I was watching the world react to my move. The first reaction came, predictably, on social media. Darlene couldn't help herself. Silence was not in her vocabulary. If she couldn't control the narrative in the courtroom, she would try to control it in the court of public opinion. A notification popped up on my old tablet, the one I kept for Maisie to watch cartoons on. It was linked to my old Facebook account, the one I rarely checked. Darlene Hart posted a new status. I clicked it. There was a photo of her, looking disheveled and teary-eyed, holding a tissue. It was a masterpiece of staging. The caption read, "I am absolutely heartbroken. After 30 years of sacrificing everything for my children, of giving my blood, sweat, and tears to raise them, this is the thanks I get. My own daughter, who I have supported through everything, has abandoned me. She has thrown me out of her life over a simple misunderstanding about money. She has left her mother with nothing. No good deed goes unpunished. Please pray for our family, and pray that Carol finds her heart again." Below it, the comments were already rolling in. Her friends, the ladies from the club, the distant cousins who didn't know the truth. "Oh, Darlene, that is awful. Kids these days are so ungrateful. Stay strong. Mama." Gavin looked over my shoulder, reading the post. "She is unbelievable," he muttered. "She is playing the victim while she is living in a house she stole from you." "Let her post," I said calmly. "Every lie she types is another piece of evidence." I took a screenshot. Then, I opened a folder on my desktop named The Rent. Inside was the screenshot of the text message she had sent me in the ambulance. "The money is rent. Because I raised you, I am evicting you." "She is telling the world she is a martyr," I said to Gavin. "But she put it in writing that she is a landlord. Renee is going to have a field day with the contradiction. You can't claim unconditional love in one breath and demand back pay for breastfeeding in the next." Then, my phone rang. It was Renee. "It is happening," she said. Sloan was just escorted out of her office building by security. "Did she call?" I asked. "No," Renee said. "But Miles Wexford did. He sent a cease and desist letter. He claims that by serving Sloan at work, we are engaging in tortious interference with her employment. He is threatening to countersue for defamation." "What did you tell him?" "I laughed," Renee said. I could practically hear the smirk through the phone. "I told him to go ahead and file. I told him I would love to depose Sloan under oath about why she was using a corporate device to access her sister's bank account while her sister was in a trauma ward. I told him that if he puts Sloan on the stand, I won't just get her fired, I will get her indicted. And Miles?" "He hung up," Renee said. "He is blustering. Carol, he knows he is holding a losing hand, but he is dangerous because he is cornered, and Darlene is cornered." "What about the restraining order?" "Granted," Renee said. "The judge signed it 10 minutes ago. It is temporary, pending a hearing, but it is effective immediately. It forbids them from coming within 500 feet of you, Gavin or Maisie, and more importantly, it freezes the Oak Street asset. They cannot sell it. They cannot refinance it. They cannot take out another line of credit against it." "They are going to explode," I said. "Let them," Renee said. "But be ready. The hearing is set for Friday. That is 48 hours from now. It is going to be an emergency session because we alleged fraud. Darlene is going to bring everything she has." I hung up. Friday, 2 days. I spent those 2 days writing. I didn't write a diary entry. I didn't write a victim impact statement. I wrote an affidavit. In my job as a risk analyst, whenever we found a fraud ring, we had to write a report for the board of directors. It had to be cold, precise, and irrefutable. It had to strip away the emotion and leave only the mechanics of the theft. I treated my mother like a rogue employee. Exhibit A, the unauthorized account. Opened, October 12, 2011. Method: use of personal identification information without consent. Total flow of funds: $140,000 over 14 years. Exhibit B, the furniture loan. Date: August 4th, 2024. Location of victim: attending child's birthday party. Location of suspect: Ashley Furniture Home Store. Signature analysis: digital forgery. Exhibit C, The hospital incident. Witnesses. 3. Objective. Biometric override of security protocols. I typed for hours. I organized the receipts. I matched the bank withdrawals to her Instagram posts. Withdrawal. $400. Nordstrom. Instagram post. Same day. Treating myself to a new look. Blessed. I matched the medical emergency transfers I had sent her to the spa records I found on the shared cloud account she forgot to disconnect. It was a mountain of lies, and I was turning it into a spreadsheet of truth. When I finished, I printed it out. It was 20 pages long. It wasn't a sob story. It was an indictment. On Friday morning, the sun was shining, but the air was cold. I dressed in a suit, not my hospital sweatpants, not the mom clothes Darlene criticized. I wore my charcoal gray interview suit, the one I wore when I negotiated my salary, the one that made me feel like armor. Edmund picked us up. He was wearing his old judicial robes in his mind. Even if he was dressed in a suit, he looked like a man going to war. "Are you ready?" he asked. "I am ready," I said. We drove to the courthouse. The building was imposing, made of gray stone and glass. I had been here before for traffic tickets, but never for this, never to divorce my family. As we walked up the steps, I saw them. Darlene was standing near the entrance. She was wearing a modest blue dress, something she must have bought just for this, because I had never seen her wear anything that unassuming. She had minimal makeup on. She looked frail. She looked like a sweet, confused grandmother. It was a costume. Sloane was next to her, looking pale and angry. She was typing furiously on her phone, probably trying to find a new job, or venting to a friend about how unfair her life was. And behind them, standing awkwardly in a suit that looked 20 years out of style, was the man from the video, my father. He looked older than I remembered. His hair was gray, thinning. He looked tired, but he was there. Standing on her side of the line, Darlene saw me. Her eyes narrowed, breaking the character of the sweet grandmother for a split second. Then she nudged my father. He looked up. He saw me. I stopped. My heart hammered against my ribs, painful and loud. This was the man I had wondered about for 20 years. The man I thought had left because he didn't love me. He took a step forward, as if to approach me. "Carol," he said. His voice was rough, unfamiliar. Darlene put a hand on his arm, stopping him. She whispered something in his ear. He nodded, stepping back into line. He was obedient. He was just another asset she was managing. Renee walked up beside me. "Don't look at them," she said. "Look at the door. That is the finish line." We walked past them. I could feel Darlene's gaze burning into the back of my neck. I could hear Sloane muttering something about drama queen. We entered the courtroom. It was quiet, smelling of wood polish and old paper. We took our seats on the plaintiff's side. Minutes later, the doors opened, and they walked in. Miles Wexford led the way, looking less confident than usual, but still projecting an air of arrogance. The judge entered, Judge Halloway. She was a stern woman with glasses perched on a chain. She looked at the files in front of her. "We are here for the matter of Rutherford versus Hart," she said. "Petition for emergency financial protection and allegation of fraud." "Your Honor," Miles stood up, buttoning his jacket. "If I may, this entire petition is frivolous. It is the result of a family dispute blown out of proportion by a young woman who is currently suffering from post-traumatic stress following a severe car accident. We have a witness, her own father, who can attest to her history of emotional instability and her mother's lifelong dedication to her well-being." He gestured to my father. "Mr. Frank Hart is here to testify that Darlene Hart has always acted in the best interest of the child, and that Carol Rutherford is unreliable." I felt Gavin's hand squeeze mine. I felt Edmund's presence like a stone wall beside me. Renee stood up. She didn't button her jacket. She didn't posture. She simply picked up the 20-page document I had written. "Your Honor," Renee said, "we welcome Mr. Hart's testimony. We would love to hear what he has to say. Considering he has been absent for 20 years and only reappeared 3 days ago in the home of the defendant." Coincidentally, right after the defendant's access to the plaintiff's bank account was blocked, Renee walked to the bench and placed the document down. "But before we hear from the ghost of Christmas past," Renee said, her voice sharpening, "I would like to submit this affidavit. It details $140,000 of theft. It details identity fraud. And it details the fact that the devoted mother currently resides in a house that belongs to my client. A house she mortgaged without my client's knowledge." The judge picked up the document. She flipped the first page, then the second. Her eyebrows went up. Darlene stood up. She couldn't help herself. The costume was slipping. "That is a lie," she shouted across the quiet courtroom. "She is lying. I bought that house. I put it in her name to build her credit. I was helping her." "Sit down, Ms. Hart," the judge warned. "I will not sit down," Darlene cried, tears springing to her eyes, real tears of frustration this time. "She is twisting everything. I am the victim here. She is ungrateful. Ask her father. Frank, tell them she is a liar." All eyes turned to my father. He stood up slowly. He looked at Darlene, then he looked at me. He looked at the daughter he hadn't seen since she was 12. He looked at the bruises on my face. He looked at the cast on my wrist. He looked at the terrifyingly competent lawyer standing next to me. And then he looked back at Darlene. "Frank," Darlene hissed. "Tell them—" My father cleared his throat. He looked at the judge. "She's lying," he said. The room gasped. Darlene smirked, a triumphant, ugly curl of her lip. But my father wasn't pointing at me. He was pointing at Darlene. "Darlene is lying," he said, his voice shaking but clear. "She didn't buy that house to help Carol. She put it in Carol's name because she had filed for bankruptcy 3 times and couldn't get a loan. And she told me if I didn't come here today and say what she wanted, she would stop paying for my heart medication." The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Darlene's face went white. Miles Wexford closed his eyes and let out a long, defeated sigh. And I looked at the stranger who was my father and realized that Edmund's move hadn't just checkmated my mother, it had freed the other hostages. Cliffhanger. The judge looked at Miles and said, "Mr. Wexford, I suggest you sit down. And Miss Hart, you have the right to remain silent. And I strongly suggest you start using it right now, because the bailiff is locking the doors." The bailiff did not lock the doors immediately. He moved to stand in front of them, his arms crossed, a silent wall of uniform blue. The air in the courtroom had shifted from the tense quiet of a legal proceeding to the volatile electric atmosphere of a bomb site immediately after detonation. My father's confession, that Darlene had blackmailed him into lying, hung in the air like smoke. Judge Holloway adjusted her glasses. She looked at Miles Wexford, who was currently staring at his polished shoes as if hoping they would transport him to another dimension. Then she looked at Darlene. "Ms. Hart," the judge said, her voice deceptively calm, "your witness just implicated you in extortion and perjury. Do you have anything to say before I hold you in contempt?" Darlene stood up. She didn't look defeated. She looked cornered, and a cornered Darlene Hart was a dangerous creature. She smoothed the front of her modest blue dress, the costume of the grieving mother she had worn for the gallery, and her face contorted. The mask of the sweet, confused grandmother melted away, replaced by the face I had seen in my nightmares for 20 years. "He is senile," Darlene said, pointing a shaking finger at my father. "Frank has always been weak. That is why I had to do everything. That is why I had to be the strong one." She turned to the judge, her eyes wide and brimming with fresh, manufactured tears. "Your Honor, look at me. I am a mother. I have spent 32 years keeping this family alive. I sacrificed my career. I sacrificed my youth. I gave up a modeling contract in New York because I got pregnant with her." She gestured violently toward me. "I stayed in a loveless marriage for her sake, and now she listens to this bitter old man." She pointed at Edmund. "And she cuts me off? She leaves me with nothing? I was only trying to protect her assets because she is unstable." "Unstable," the judge repeated, writing something down. Yes, unstable. Darlene approached the bench, ignoring Miles's frantic hand signals to stop. She was in a car accident. She has brain trauma. She doesn't know what she is doing. That is why I needed the power of attorney. I needed to pay her bills because she couldn't. I am the only one who knows how to run this family's finances. I have done it for decades. We have noticed, Renee Calder said. She stood up, her voice cutting through Darlene's hysteria like a scalpel. And that brings us to the method of your management, Your Honor. The defense claims they were acting under emergency protocols to assist a comatose patient. They claim they brought a notary public, Mr. Henderson, to the hospital to legally witness a signature. Renee walked back to our table and picked up a single sheet of paper. Mr. Wexford, Renee said, turning to the defense table, you submitted an affidavit from Mr. Henderson stating he was present and willing to notarize the document on January 29th, correct? Yes, Miles said, his voice tight. Mr. Henderson is a licensed notary in the state. Was, Renee corrected. She handed the paper to the bailiff, who walked it up to the judge. This is a certified record from the Secretary of State's office, Renee announced. Mr. Henderson's notary commission was suspended on December 15th of last year, following a complaint regarding fraudulent witnessing of real estate documents. He has not held a valid license for 6 weeks. The courtroom went deadly silent. Judge Holloway looked at the paper. Then she looked over her glasses at Miles Wexford. Mr. Wexford, the judge said, are you telling me that you, a practicing attorney with 20 years of experience, brought a suspended notary into a trauma ward to execute a power of attorney document? Miles turned a pale shade of gray. Your Honor, I was not aware of the suspension. Mr. Henderson assured me. You didn't check? The judge snapped. You brought a stranger into a secure medical facility to extract a fingerprint from a semi-conscious woman. And you didn't check if he was legally authorized to be there? It was an oversight, Miles stammered. It wasn't an oversight, I spoke up. I hadn't planned to speak. Renee had told me to let the lawyers talk, but the rage in my chest was hot and demanding. I stood up, gripping the edge of the table. My ribs throbbed, a sharp, rhythmic reminder of why I was here. It wasn't an oversight, I repeated. It was a feature. They needed someone who wouldn't ask questions. They needed someone who would look at a woman pretending to be in a coma and say she was alert. A real notary wouldn't do that. Miles knew exactly who he was hiring. Sit down. Ms. Rutherford, the judge said gently. But she didn't look angry. She looked at Darlene. Ms. Hart, your lawyer seems to be having trouble explaining the legality of your actions. Perhaps you can explain the financial basis. You claim your daughter owes you this support. Is there a contract? Darlene gripped the railing of the witness stand. A contract? She is my daughter. There is an implied contract. I raised her. I fed her. I paid for her braces. You don't sign a contract for love. But you do sign a contract for a loan, I said. You claimed the money I gave you was a loan repayment. In the ambulance, you texted me that the money was rent for my body, rent for my existence. It is a figure of speech, Darlene shrieked. I poured $300,000 into raising you. Do you think that is free? Do you think you get to just grow up and walk away with all that investment? So it is an investment, Judge Holloway said. Not a gift, not support, an investment expecting a return. It is my right, Darlene yelled. I am her mother. Your Honor, Renee interrupted, moving the narrative forward before Darlene could spiral further into her victim complex. Whether Ms. Hart believes she is owed a return on her investment or not is a moral question. The legal question is fraud. We have established the notary was invalid. Now, let's look at the digital footprint. Renee pulled up a display on the courtroom monitor. It was the log from the bank's security team. Defense counsel claims that Darlene Hart was the sole actor in this emergency attempt to access funds. Renee said. They claim Sloan Hart, the sister, was merely a bystander. However, the bank's cybersecurity unit tracked the device used to attempt the second authorization change. The one that happened at 5:45 in the afternoon. While my client was still in the hospital, the screen showed a map, a red dot pinged at the Oak Street address. The device ID corresponds to an iPad Pro, Renee said. Specifically, an iPad Pro registered to the corporate IT department of Logistics Plus, where Sloan Hart is employed. I looked at Sloan. She was sitting in the front row, behind Darlene. She had been staring at her phone, looking bored, but now her head snapped up. Your Honor, Renee continued, this was not a mother acting alone in a panic. This was a coordinated attack, while Darlene Hart was at the hospital creating a diversion. Sloan Hart was at the safe house using a corporate device to attempt to crack the bank's verbal duress password. They were brute forcing the account from 2 locations simultaneously. That is a lie. Sloan stood up, her face flushing pink. I was just checking my email. I didn't try to hack anything. The log shows 17 attempts to reset the password using your device. Ms. Hart, Renee said, not even looking at her. 17, in 12 minutes. That is not checking email. That is panic. Sit down, Ms. Hart, the judge ordered Sloan, or you will join your mother at the defendant's table. Darlene saw the walls closing in. The notary was burned. The tech evidence was damning. The Good Mother Act had been shattered by my father. She had one card left, the only card she ever really knew how to play. She attacked me. This is not about money, Darlene shouted, turning fully to face the gallery, playing to an audience that wasn't there. This is about her guilt. She knows she's a bad mother. She leaves her daughter, Maisie, with strangers to go on business trips. She works 60 hours a week and ignores her child. I am the one who picks Maisie up. I am the one who bakes the cookies. I am the one raising that child because Carol is too busy chasing a paycheck. I felt Gavin tense beside me. He started to stand up. His fists clenched. I put a hand on his arm. Don't, I signaled. Let her dig. She is unfit, Darlene continued, her voice rising to a fever pitch. That is why I needed the money. To provide a stable home for my granddaughter. Because her mother is cold. Her mother is a robot. Her mother cares more about spreadsheets than she does about her own flesh and blood. Judge Holloway slammed her gavel down. The sound cracked through the room like a gunshot. Enough, the judge roared. The room froze. Ms. Hart, the judge said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly low register. This is a civil court for financial disputes. This is not a custody hearing. And frankly, based on the testimony I have heard today regarding your use of your own daughter as an ATM, I would be very careful about casting stones regarding parenting skills. Darlene's mouth snapped shut. She looked around, realizing for the first time that no one was nodding. No one was sympathetic. Even her own lawyer was looking at his papers, refusing to meet her eye. We are done with the theatrics, Judge Holloway said. I have seen the evidence. I have seen the invalid notary commission. I have seen the digital logs, and I have seen the durable power of attorney signed by Ms. Rutherford in 2021, designating Edmund Rutherford as her agent. The judge picked up her pen. I am issuing a preliminary injunction, she stated, effective immediately. All assets held in the name of Carol Rutherford, or jointly held with Darlene Hart, are frozen. No withdrawals, no transfers, no lines of credit. You can't do that, Darlene gasped. I have bills. I have a mortgage. You should have thought of that before you attempted to bypass a biometric lock on a trauma patient, the judge said. Furthermore, I am referring this file, including the testimony regarding the notary and the misuse of corporate property, to the district attorney's office for review of potential criminal charges including identity theft, wire fraud, and elder abuse, though in this case, it is financial abuse of a dependent. Criminal? Miles Wexford squeaked. Criminal, the judge confirmed. And Mr. Wexford, I am referring your conduct regarding Mr. Henderson to the State Bar Ethics Committee. You have a lot of explaining to do. Court is adjourned, she said, banging the gavel one last time. The sound was final, It was the sound of a heavy door slamming shut on 32 years of manipulation. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since I was 10 years old. Gavin wrapped his arm around me. Edmund put a hand on my shoulder. "We did it," Edmund whispered, across the aisle. Darlene was standing motionless. She looked small. The grandeur of her delusion had been stripped away, leaving only a greedy, desperate woman in a cheap blue dress. Miles Wexford packed his briefcase in record time and practically ran out of the courtroom, leaving his clients behind. Sloane grabbed her purse and bolted, not even looking at her mother. Darlene was alone. She turned slowly. She looked at my father, who was still sitting in the witness box, looking sad and tired. He didn't look back at her. He stood up and walked toward us. Darlene's eyes locked onto me. There was no remorse in them. There was no sadness. There was only a cold, hard calculation. She walked toward the aisle, intercepting us as we tried to leave. Edmund stepped in front of me, blocking her path. "Get out of the way, old man," Darlene spat. "You are done, Darlene," Edmund said. "Go home." "Home?" Darlene laughed. It was a brittle, jagged sound. "You think you won? You think because you froze the bank accounts you have stopped me?" She leaned around Edmund, her eyes fixing on mine with a venomous intensity. "You ungrateful little brat," she hissed. "You think you can cut me off? You think you can starve me out? I hold the cards. Carol, I still have the ace." "You have nothing," I said calmly. "I have the apartment," she smiled. It was a cruel smile. "The condo. The one you love so much. The one where you grew up. The one where all your little childhood memories are stored. I know you. Carol, you are sentimental. You think that place matters." She took a step back, smoothing her dress. "I am listing it tomorrow," she said. "I am going to sell it to the first developer who offers me cash. I will tear it down. I will burn it to the ground if I have to, and I will take that money and I will disappear. And you will never see a dime of it. You want to freeze your accounts? Fine. I will liquidate the real estate. Try stopping a cash sale in this market." I looked at her. I thought about the condo. It wasn't where I grew up. That was the house she lost in the divorce. The condo was the luxury apartment she moved into 5 years ago. The one she claimed was her sanctuary. The one she claimed she bought with her inheritance. But I looked at Edmund. Edmund wasn't angry. He wasn't worried. He was looking at Darlene with an expression of mild curiosity, like a scientist watching a rat run into a wall it didn't know was there. "You are going to sell the apartment, Darlene?" Edmund asked quietly. "Watch me," she threatened. "I will have a for sale sign up by noon tomorrow. I will sell it for half its value just to spite you." Edmund leaned forward on his cane. He lowered his voice, but in the quiet courtroom, it carried like thunder. "You can't sell the apartment, Darlene," he said. "Why not?" she challenged. "It is in my name." Edmund shook his head slowly. A small, dry smile touched his lips. "No," he said. "It isn't." Darlene froze. "What are you talking about? I signed the deed." "You signed a deed to transfer it into the Rutherford Family Trust," Edmund said. 5 years ago, when you begged me for the loan to buy it because your credit score was 400, you put the title in the trust as collateral. Darlene, you don't own that apartment. You are just a tenant on a revocable lease." Darlene's face went slack. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And guess who the trustee is?" Edmund asked softly. He pointed to me. "I transferred the trusteeship this morning," Edmund said. "Carol isn't just your daughter anymore. Darlene, she is your landlord." Cliffhanger. Darlene looked at me, horror dawning in her eyes, as she realized the eviction notice wasn't a metaphor. It was imminent. The realization that hit Darlene in the middle of the courtroom aisle was not a sudden spark. It was a slow, crushing weight. It was the look of a woman standing on a trapdoor she had built herself, listening to the latch click open. "You are lying," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I have the papers. I have the title in my safe." "You have a copy of the deed of trust," Edmund corrected, his voice calm and devastatingly final. And if you had ever bothered to read past the first page, instead of just looking for where to sign your name, you would have seen Article 7. Edmund didn't need to pull out the document. He knew it by heart. He recited it right there in the open court, with the bailiff standing 3 feet away and Miles Wexford fleeing toward the exit. Article 7, Section C, Edmund quoted, his eyes locked on Darlene's. The grantor reserves the right to revoke the occupancy privileges of any beneficiary or resident upon a finding of malicious financial injury against the primary beneficiary. Such revocation is immediate and requires no notice period beyond 24 hours. Darlene blinked. Malicious financial injury? It means stealing from Carol, Edmund translated. It means that the moment you tried to use her thumbprint to bypass a bank lock, you didn't just commit a crime, you breached the lease. You triggered the eviction clause I wrote 5 years ago specifically for this day. You planned this? Darlene asked, her face draining of color. I anticipated it, Edmund said. There is a difference. I hoped you would never be desperate enough to cannibalize your own child, but I prepared for the eventuality that you would. He tapped his cane on the floor. Click. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. Darlene, the locks will be changed at noon tomorrow. We walked past her then. We left her standing in the aisle, a woman who had walked in expecting to seize a fortune and was walking out homeless. The drive back to the temporary rental was quiet, but it was a good quiet. It was the silence of a battlefield after the cannons have stopped firing. I sat in the back seat with Gavin, my head resting on his shoulder. The pain in my ribs was still there, a dull, rhythmic reminder of the crash, but the crushing weight on my chest, the invisible one that had been there for 30 years, was gone. When we got inside, the dominoes started to fall, and they fell fast. It started with the bank. I opened my laptop to check my email, and there it was, a formal letter from the fraud department of First Horizon. It wasn't an automated alert this time. It was a personal correspondence from the Vice President of Security. Dear Ms. Rutherford, following the internal investigation triggered by your verbal duress signal and the subsequent police report, we have confirmed that the account opening documents from 2011 contain a forged signature. The handwriting analysis confirms a 99% probability that the signature matches the exemplar provided by Darlene Hart. I read on. It got better. Furthermore, we have classified all transfers from your primary checking account to this fraudulent account as unauthorized theft. We are initiating a chargeback process. We have already frozen the receiving account held by Ms. Hart and have begun the process of reversing the funds. We have recovered $42,000 remaining in her balance. She is losing the cash, I said to Gavin, turning the screen so he could see. They are clawing it back. She had $42,000 sitting there, probably money she was hiding from the bankruptcy court, and the bank just seized it to pay me back. That is just the beginning, Edmund said from the kitchen, where he was making tea. Renee just called. She served the eviction notice to the doorman at the condo building. Darlene hasn't even made it home yet, and the building management already knows she is out. What about Sloan? I asked. Sloan is currently having a very bad afternoon, Edmund said. He wasn't wrong. An hour later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the Cloud family sharing group, the one I had forgotten to leave. It was a device removed alert. Sloan's iPad Pro has been removed from Find My. Sloan's iPhone has been wiped. Then, a text from Renee. Update. The police executed a search warrant on Sloan's apartment based on the IP logs. They seized 2 laptops and 3 hard drives. Sloan tried to claim she lost the iPad, but her IT department remotely locked it and provided the geolocation to the detectives. It was in her purse. The digital trail was unraveling. Every text message where they conspired to hide the money, every email where Darlene told Sloan to keep Carol busy, every login attempt, it was all being harvested. They thought deleting a text made it go away. They didn't understand that on a corporate server, nothing ever truly goes away. But the most satisfying noise wasn't a notification. It was the silence from Miles Wexford. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the news broke on the local legal blog. Renee had filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association. It wasn't a private reprimand. It was a public filing. Attorney Miles Wexford, accused of facilitating fraud in local trauma ward. The article detailed the suspended notary. It detailed the attempt to coerce a signature from a hospitalized patient. It was career suicide in the world of high-stakes family law. Reputation is currency, and Miles Wexford was now bankrupt. He won't be able to represent her at the hearing, Edmund noted, reading the article on his tablet. He will be too busy trying to keep his license. Darlene is legally defenseless. I sat back on the couch. I should have felt guilty. I had been trained to feel guilty. She is your mother. The voice in my head whispered, she is going to be on the street. But then I looked at the credit report again. I looked at the furniture loan. I looked at the date, August 4th. My daughter's birthday. I killed the voice. What happens to the condo? I asked Edmund. It reverts to the trust, Edmund said. You are the trustee now. You decide. You can sell it. You can rent it out. You can burn it down. Though I wouldn't recommend it for insurance reasons. I don't want it, I said. I don't want to step foot in it. Sell it. Put the money into a college fund for Maisie. Let Darlene's sanctuary pay for her granddaughter's future. Poetic? Edmund nodded. I will call the broker. The real crash came at 5 o'clock. That was when Darlene finally realized the extent of the blockade. We knew because the notifications started rolling in from the secondary credit cards, the ones she was an authorized user on, the ones I had canceled that morning. Transaction declined. Silver Creek Country Club, monthly dues, $600. Transaction declined. Whole Foods Market, $82. Transaction declined. Uber, $24. She was trying to live her normal life. She was trying to go to the club. She was trying to buy organic grapes. She was trying to take a car service home. And at every swipe, the machine beeped red. She was discovering, one decline at a time, that she didn't actually exist financially. She was a ghost who had been haunting my wallet. My phone rang. It was her. I stared at the screen. Mom. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. Then Sloan called. Then a number I didn't recognize. Probably a burner phone or a stranger she had borrowed a phone from. Don't answer, Gavin said, taking the phone from my hand. We have the restraining order. If you answer, they will claim you invited contact. Let it go to voicemail. Let it be evidence. He set the phone on the counter. We watched it vibrate. It was like watching a trapped insect buzzing against a glass jar. That night, we didn't sleep at the rental. We didn't feel safe, even there. Darlene was desperate, and desperate people do irrational things. We went to a hotel 2 towns over. We paid cash. We checked in under Gavin's maiden name, his mother's name. We were fugitives from my own family. The next morning, the final blow landed. It was a courier envelope delivered to Renee's office, forwarded to us via email. It wasn't a legal threat. It was a surrender. It was a letter from Darlene, written by hand on her personalized stationery, the stationery I had paid for last Christmas. Carol, I am leaving the condo. The locks are on the counter. I have taken my clothes and my jewelry. I left the furniture. I know you say it is yours. Even though I picked it out, I am staying with a friend. I don't know where I will go after that. You have succeeded. You have humiliated me. You have made your mother homeless. I hope you are happy. I hope that money keeps you warm at night. I am not asking for the apartment back. I know Edmund has poisoned you against me. But I am asking for one thing. The court date is set for Tuesday to finalize the restraining order and the civil suit. I will be there. I will not fight you. I will sign whatever you want. But before that, I want to see you, one last time. Not in court, not with lawyers, just us. Meet me at the coffee shop on 4th Street. The one where we used to go when you were in high school. The one where we planned your prom dress. Please, just 5 minutes. To say goodbye properly. If you ever loved me, give me 5 minutes. Mom, I read the letter. I read it twice. It is a trap, Gavin said immediately. She wants to guilt trip you, or worse, she wants to record you saying something she can use to invalidate the restraining order. She wants to manipulate the narrative, Edmund agreed. She wants to cry in a public place so she can tell people you were cruel to her face. Do not go, Carol. I looked at the letter. I looked at the handwriting. It was shaky. It wasn't the bold, aggressive script she usually used. It looked defeated. But I also remembered the text message. Rent. I remembered the notary. I remembered the look in her eyes when she told me she was evicting me from her life. I have to go, I said. Carol, no, Gavin said, grabbing my hand. Why? What is the point? You have won. Just let her fade away. I haven't won, I said. Not yet. Winning isn't just about the money. Gavin, winning is about the story. If I don't go, she spends the rest of her life telling herself, and anyone who will listen, that I was too coward to face her, that I hid behind lawyers and judges, that I didn't have the guts to look her in the eye and tell her it was over. I stood up, wincing as my ribs protested. I need to close the book, I said. I need to be the one who walks away this time. For 30 years, she has been the one walking away from my feelings, walking away from reality. Today, I walk away. Edmund looked at me. He studied my face, looking for the little girl he used to take fishing, but he didn't find her. He found the risk analyst. He found the woman who had dismantled a fraud ring in 48 hours. Okay, Edmund said slowly, but you do not go alone. She said no lawyers, I said. She said no lawyers, Edmund corrected. She didn't say no security. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, black device. It was a voice recorder. And, Edmund added, she didn't say anything about the table next to hers. I drove to the coffee shop on 4th Street. It was a place frozen in time. It smelled of roasted beans and cinnamon, the same smell that used to comfort me when I was 16, and Darlene was buying me a latte to apologize for missing my choir recital. I walked in. My heart was beating a steady, heavy rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. She was sitting in the back booth. She looked different. The defiance was gone. The Chanel suit was gone. She was wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans. Her hair, usually sprayed into a helmet of perfection, was loose and slightly frizzy. She looked 20 years older than she had in the courtroom. She looked like a mother. That was the danger. That was the weapon. I walked over. I didn't sit down. I stood at the edge of the table. Carol, she said. Her voice was soft, broken. You came? I have 5 minutes, I said. Talk. Please, sit, she said, gesturing to the empty chair. You look like you are in pain. How are your ribs? My ribs are healing, I said. My bank account is healing faster. She flinched. I deserve that, she whispered. I know I messed up. Carol, I know I went too far. You didn't go too far, I said. You went criminal. You committed felonies. Mom, plural. I was scared, she said, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I am getting old. I have no retirement. I have no husband. I looked at you, and you have everything. You have a career. You have Gavin. You have Maisie. I thought you could spare it. I thought you wouldn't miss it. You stole my identity, I said. You mortgaged my name. I did it for us, she pleaded, to keep the family looking good, to keep our status. Do you think it is easy being Darlene Hart? Do you think it is easy keeping up appearances? I don't care about appearances, I said. I care about trust. I can earn it back, she said. She reached across the table, trying to take my hand. Carol, please, don't let me die alone. Don't let me be homeless. I will sign the papers. I will go to therapy. Just don't cut me off completely. Let me see Maisie. Let me be a grandmother. For a second, the old programming kicked in. The urge to fix it. The urge to save her. She looked so small, so pathetic. But then, I saw it. Her eyes flicked down. Just for a microsecond, they flicked down to her purse, which was sitting open on the table. The phone was propped up inside, the camera lens peeking out. She was recording. She was trying to get a confession. She was trying to get me to say, "I will help you," or "I am sorry," so she could take it to court and argue that the restraining order was unnecessary because we were reconciling. She wasn't apologizing. She was hunting. I looked at the phone in her purse. Then I looked at her. "You are recording this," I said. Her face went pale. "What? No, The phone in your purse," I said. "The red light is on." She scrambled to cover the bag, but it was too late. "You haven't changed," I said. My voice wasn't angry anymore. It was just tired. "You will never change. You don't want a daughter. Darlene, you want an accomplice." I took a step back. "Goodbye, Mom," I said. "Carol, wait!" she screamed, abandoning the act. She stood up, knocking the coffee cup over. Brown liquid spilled across the table, dripping onto her jeans. "You can't leave me. I will sue you. I will tell everyone you beat me. I will destroy you." "You already tried," I said. "You failed." I turned and walked toward the door. "Carol," she shrieked. "I am your mother. You owe me." I kept walking. I walked past the counter. I walked past the tables of staring customers. And as I reached the door, I saw the man sitting at the table nearest the exit. He was reading a newspaper, but he lowered it as I approached. It was Edmund, and sitting next to him, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, was a large man with a badge on his belt, a plainclothes officer. Edmund stood up. He didn't look at Darlene. He looked at me. "Did you get what you needed?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I got closure." "Good," Edmund said. He turned to the officer. "She admitted to the fraud on the recording we just made," Edmund said to the cop. "And she just violated the restraining order by attempting to entrap the victim. You have everything you need." "Yes, sir," the officer said. He stood up and walked toward the back booth, where Darlene was still screaming. "Ms. Hart," the officer said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "I need you to stand up and put your hands behind your back." I didn't watch. I pushed open the door and walked out into the sunlight. The air was crisp and cold, but it felt clean. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs. My ribs hurt, but it was a healing pain. I walked to the car where Gavin and Maisie were waiting. Gavin saw me coming and rolled down the window. "Is it over?" he asked. I looked back at the coffee shop. I saw the flashing blue lights of a patrol car pulling up to the curb. "Yes," I said. "It's over." I got into the car. I buckled my seatbelt. I looked at my daughter in the car seat. She smiled at me, holding up her stuffed bunny. "Mama back," she cheered. "Yes, baby," I said, tears finally spilling down my cheeks. Mama is back, and she is never going away again. Edmund's one move had changed everything. He hadn't just checkmated the queen. He had cleared the board so we could start a new game, and this time, I was playing for myself. The recording played through the high-fidelity speakers of the courtroom, filling the sterile air with the sounds of a coffee shop, the clinking of ceramic cups, the murmur of background conversation, and then, the undeniable, shrill voice of my mother. "I raised you to pay me." The words hung in the air, echoing off the mahogany walls. It wasn't a figure of speech. It wasn't a metaphor. It was a confession of indentured servitude. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped in front of me. I didn't look at Darlene. I looked at the audio waveform on the monitor, watching the jagged red spikes of her rage. That was the evidence Renee Calder had secured. That was the meeting in a safe public place that had sealed the coffin. Darlene had thought she was manipulating me into a settlement. Instead, she had handed me the murder weapon. Judge Holloway sat motionless on the bench. She had listened to the entire 5-minute conversation. She had heard Darlene admit to the fraud. She had heard Darlene beg for secrecy. But most damning of all, She had heard the transaction defined. Renee stood up. She didn't need to shout. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning hum. "Your Honor," Renee said, "the defense has argued that the hundreds of thousands of dollars taken from my client over the last decade were family support or gifts inherent to the mother-daughter relationship. But the defendant's own words clarify the nature of this arrangement. She explicitly states, 'I raised you to pay me.' That is not a relationship. That is a loan shark collecting on a debt that was never agreed to." Darlene was sitting at the defense table alone. Miles Wexford was gone. His chair empty. His nameplate removed. He had withdrawn from the case 24 hours after the ethics complaint was filed, citing a conflict of interest, which was lawyer speak for, "I am trying to stay out of prison." Darlene had been assigned a public defender. A young, tired-looking man who clearly wished he was anywhere else. The public defender stood up half-heartedly. "Your Honor, my client was under duress. She was emotional. It was hyperbole." "It sounded like accounting to me," Judge Holloway replied. She shuffled the papers in front of her. The stack was thick. It contained the forensic audit of the unauthorized account, the logs of the biometric hacking attempt, the affidavit from the suspended notary, and now the audio confession. "Darlene Hart," the judge said. Darlene stood up. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, without the expensive clothes, which had been seized or sold, and without the armor of her delusions. She was just an aging woman who had burned every bridge she had ever built. "I find you liable for civil fraud, conversion of assets, and identity theft," the judge ruled. "I am ordering full restitution in the amount of $184,000. Representing the proven unauthorized transfers and the fraudulent credit lines, this amount will be garnished from any remaining assets, including the liquidation of personal property seized by the court." Darlene gripped the table. "I don't have that kind of money," she whispered. "Then you will have a judgment against you for the rest of your life," the judge said. "Furthermore, regarding the restraining order, based on the documented attempt to bypass hospital security and the harassment of the victim, I am making the temporary protection order permanent. You are to have no contact with Carol Rutherford, Gavin Rutherford, or Maisie Rutherford, indefinitely, 500 feet. If you violate this, you go to jail. Do you understand?" Darlene nodded. She didn't look at me. She couldn't. "Finally," the judge continued, "regarding the criminal aspects of this case, I am forwarding the full evidence package, including the unauthorized use of a corporate device and the coercion of a notary. To the district attorney, they will decide on charges for wire fraud and elder financial abuse. You are released on your own recognizance pending that arraignment, but do not leave the state." The gavel banged. Crack. It was over. The legal war was over, but the cleanup was just beginning. I walked out of the courtroom into the hallway. Sloane was standing there. She wasn't in the courtroom. She hadn't been allowed in because she was a co-conspirator negotiating a separate deal. She looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was wearing no makeup. She held a cup of vending machine coffee with both hands. Renee walked over to her lawyer, a sharp-looking man who specialized in plea bargains. They exchanged a few words, signed a paper, and shook hands. Sloane looked up and saw me. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the sneer. I didn't see the jealousy. I saw fear. "I signed it," Sloane said. Her voice was flat. "I took the deal. I admitted to unauthorized use of digital property, misdemeanor, probation for 2 years. I have to pay back the bank for the investigation costs." "And your job?" I asked. "Gone," Sloane said. "Obviously, you can't work in logistics if you are on probation for hacking. They fired me yesterday, effective immediately." She took a sip of the coffee. Her hand was shaking. "I have to move," she said. "I can't afford my apartment anymore. I am moving to a studio in East Seabrook. It is not nice." "It is a start," I said. Sloane looked at me, really looked at me, as if seeing a stranger. "Why didn't you just pay her, Carol? It would have been so much easier. You had the money. Why did you burn it all down? Because it wasn't my debt, I said. And it isn't yours either. Sloane, you just haven't realized it yet. Sloane shook her head. She didn't understand. She was still trapped in the mindset that we existed to serve the Queen. She walked away down the corridor, her heels clicking a lonely rhythm on the tile. I watched her go. I hoped, for her sake, that one day she would wake up. But I couldn't wake her up. I had to save myself first. We left the courthouse and drove to the condo. It was the final piece of the puzzle. The deadline Edmund had set was noon. It was 11:45. We didn't go inside. We didn't want to see her packing. We stood in the lobby with the building manager and a locksmith. At 11:55, the elevator doors opened. Darlene walked out. She was pushing a single luggage cart. It had 4 suitcases on it. That was it. 30 years of high society life, reduced to 4 bags of clothes and a jewelry box. She saw us standing there, Edmund, me, Gavin. She stopped. She looked at the building manager, then at the locksmith holding the drill. "You are early," she said. "We are on time," Edmund replied. He checked his watch. "You have 5 minutes." Darlene pushed the cart forward. She stopped in front of me. This was the moment where, in the movies, the villain screams or begs or promises revenge. But Darlene was tired. The fuel that ran her engine, the narcissism, the delusion, had been cut off. "I hope it was worth it," she said. "I hope you enjoy your money." "Carol, it is cold comfort." "It's not comfort," I said. "It's security. And yes, it is worth it." She looked at Edmund. "You won, old man." "No one won, Darlene," Edmund said sadly. "We all lost. You just lost the most." She pushed the cart through the automatic doors and out onto the sidewalk. A yellow taxi was waiting. The driver got out to help her with the bags. I watched through the glass as she loaded her life into the trunk. She didn't look back. She got in, and the car drove away, disappearing into the city traffic. The locksmith looked at me. "Ready to change the cylinder, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. "Change it, and do not give me a copy of the key." "What?" the manager asked. "Who gets the key?" "The real estate broker," I said. "List it today. Sell it. I never want to see this address on a piece of paper again." 2 weeks later, the check from the bank arrived. It was a standard envelope, indistinguishable from junk mail, but inside was a cashier's check for $42,000. The funds recovered from Darlene's account, combined with the settlement from the furniture store, who had voided the fraudulent loan immediately upon receiving the police report to avoid a lawsuit, and the sale of the condo which was pending. The financial bleeding had stopped. I sat at the kitchen table in the new house. It wasn't a condo in the sky. It wasn't a mansion. It was a 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a quiet suburb with good schools. It needed a new roof in 5 years. The kitchen cabinets were dated. The carpet in the hallway was a questionable shade of beige, but the deed had 2 names on it, Carol Rutherford and Gavin Rutherford. There were no liens. There were no secret second mortgages. There were no investment investors living in the guest room. "Mama!" Maisie ran into the kitchen, her feet thumping on the linoleum. She was holding a plastic stethoscope. She pressed it to my leg. "Heart okay?" she asked. I smiled. Picking her up and settling her on my lap, I winced slightly. My ribs were 90% healed, but a deep breath still reminded me of the crash. "My heart is perfect," I said. "How is yours?" "Hungry," she declared. Gavin walked in, carrying a basket of laundry. He looked younger, lighter. The stress lines around his eyes had smoothed out. We weren't fighting about money anymore because we weren't hemorrhaging it. We had a budget. We had savings. We had a future. Edmund came over that evening for dinner. We grilled burgers on the back deck. The air smelled of charcoal and cut grass. "The district attorney called," Edmund said, flipping a burger. "They are pressing charges. Identity theft in the 1st degree. Darlene is looking at probation and mandatory restitution. Maybe 6 months of community service if she pleads out. The felony record will stick. Does she have a lawyer? I asked. A public defender, Edmund said. She can't afford anyone else. Her credit is frozen, and her reputation is radioactive. I looked out at the yard where Maisie was chasing fireflies. I feel sad, I admitted. Is that wrong? She is my mother. It is not wrong, Edmund said. It is grief. You are mourning the mother you wanted, not the one you had. You are mourning the potential. Carol, that is normal. But don't confuse grief with regret. You saved your daughter from the same cycle. That is what matters. He put the burger on a bun and handed it to me. You broke the wheel, he said. I took the plate. I looked at the burger. I looked at my family. For 32 years, I had believed that love was a transaction. I believed that I had to pay for my place in the world. I believed that I was an asset to be managed, a resource to be harvested. But as I sat there, listening to Gavin laugh and watching my daughter spin in circles in the grass, I realized the truth. I hadn't lost my family. I had simply fired the corrupt management. Darlene was out there somewhere, likely telling a stranger a story about her ungrateful daughter, trying to find a new host to attach herself to. But she wasn't here. She wasn't in my phone. She wasn't in my bank account. I was free. I took a bite of the burger. It tasted like charcoal and ketchup and absolute, unadulterated freedom. My grandfather's one move, that blue folder, that single piece of paper signed 5 years ago, had changed everything. It hadn't just protected my money. It had given me permission to protect myself. And that was a debt I could never repay. And for the first time, I knew I didn't have to. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below sharing your city or country. It is amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more stories where justice is served cold, please subscribe to the Nina Revenge Stories channel. Hit the like button and smash that hype button to help this story get recommended to more people.